You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I gotta tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil three-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Chase Kletsky with Fate Magazine Radio, and you're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station, where the Fader-Knots rock.
All right, welcome back, Fade to Black, the Monday edition. Now we're behind. I got a lot to make up. Today, let's get this show cracking. We got a lot to do. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Ah, yes. Today, Race Hobbs will be with us in a few short minutes. Then Micah Hanks doing a drive-by. Then Peter Levenda will be joining us tomorrow night. Jim Mars with a little Levenda, because we're going to need a part deux. Wednesday night, Clifford Stone. Also, tomorrow night, Graham Bonnet is going to be here. Rainbow, Alcatraz, Bonnet, Michael Schenker, Graham Bonnet, one of the greatest singers of all times. Okay, let's get this show cracking. Let's go. Today, Chris Cornell is 51 years young. Chris Cornell. I don't have enough time tonight to tell some Cornell stories, but I will later. I've got a million. Chris Cornell, happy birthday, 51 years old. Also today, and this is strange, guitarist Stone Gossard is 49 of Pearl Jam. What a weird coincidence. And I'm sure those two know it, and I'm sure those two are having a birthday party together tonight somewhere in Seattle. Also today, actor Dean Winters is 51, and Dean is one of my favorites. And this is how you make the list. Dean caught my attention when he was on the show Oz, and he disturbed me greatly. And you know Dean from, he plays Mayhem in all of those Allstate insurance commercials. That's Dean Winters. And you may know him from 30 Rock too as well. I know Dean from Oz, a show that ended all wrong. Dean Winters, 51 years old. Also today, here we go, a biggie. Carlos Santana is 68 years old. I meant to cue up that one song that I wrote, tribute for Santana called Bandana. And in that song, I included every cool Carlos Santana lick of all time. And it's all in one song in like 3.5 minutes. I didn't cue it up. I meant to, but it was going to take too much time. So there you go. Carlos Santana today is 68. Our dead guy's birthday today is Natalie Wood. Moment of silence, please. 1938 to 1981. was tragically died, probably murdered, at the age of 43. She played Maria in West Side Story in 1961, and she won a Golden Globe for her role in the 1979 remake of From Here to Eternity. As a teenager, she was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for her work in Rebel Without a Cause. She was certainly one of the most beautiful women to walk the face of the earth. Absolutely stunning, gifted actress. But during the remake of her last film, which was called Brainstorm, she allegedly drowned while on a weekend boat trip to Catalina Island here in Southern California with her husband, Robert Wagner, and Christopher Walken. And the boat's captain, his name was Dennis Davern. Many facts surrounding her drowning are unknown because nobody would talk about it. Nobody would say that they even saw her enter the water. Wood's body was discovered 1 mile away from the boat with a small inflatable dinghy raft found beached nearby. And according to Wagner, when he went to bed, Wood was not there. The autopsy report that she had bruises all over her body and arms, as well as an abrasion on her left cheek. It remains unsolved to this day. And Christopher Walken, you know, the way that they talk about it, they drank all day on the boat, and somehow that happened at the end of the day. And he refuses to talk about it to this day. And I have my own opinion. And there you go. Natalie Wood. Happy birthday. Do follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Shoot me an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. And let me just say this really quick. I'm taking a Power Vite right now. And for this show, the way that it just started out, I need my Power Vite. If I've ever needed a Power Vite, I need it right now. Yep. So let me take the chance to drink out of my new Stormtrooper mug. Power Vites. A complete multivitamin mineral formula designed to naturally boost your energy. This multivitamin goes to work now, fast. It's made from the same good bacteria found in better yogurts. Helps your body absorb all of those nutrients. I love the smell of vitamins. The Green Turtle Bay Vitamin Company are dedicated nutritionists and have been producing Power Vites for over 20 years right here in the United States of America. They do. They produce high-quality nutritional, dietary, and health supplements in small, fresh, potent batches, and they ship direct to you. To order, just go to their website, energywave.com. The banners are at jimmychurchradio.com. Click on it. Use the promo code KGRA and get free shipping on your order. You can also call 1-800-TURTLE-5. Live operators are standing by. That number is 1-800-887-8535. energywave.com. Go Beckley Tepe. On this day in history, 1969, Armstrong allegedly walked on the moon. But then in 1976, Viking 1 lands on Mars on the same day, on the anniversary. Strange, maybe. But between that and 1973, Bruce Lee died at the age of 32. All on July 20th. Fader facts. On November 30th, 1954, a large meteorite crashed through the roof of a woman's home. Her name was Ann Hodges in Alabama. That meteorite hit her and bruised her hip. Why is this a Fader fact? It was the first recorded instant of a meteorite hitting a person. And that is a Fader fact. In a few minutes, we're going to have Race Hobbs with us. We're going to be talking about something that happened today. He wrote an article because today, theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking announced the launch of a new $100 million effort to track down alien life. Not only that, within the next decade. Who funded it? How are they pulling it off? What is going on? All of that we'll be talking about with Race Hobbs here in just a few minutes. And I just wanted to say really quick, check this out. The Smithsonian, because of the anniversary of Armstrong allegedly walking on the moon. Today it was announced that the Smithsonian launched a Kickstarter campaign to gain support for restoring Neil Armstrong's Apollo 11 spacesuit. And so they can display it at the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. Now, it hasn't been on display since 2006, and funds raised through this effort would allow it to be properly preserved ahead of the 50th anniversary of the Apollo mission in 2019. Now, check this out. How much money do they need to restore his spacesuit and build a custom case for it, a climate control display case? Are you sitting down? Are you ready? $500,000. $500,000. I could do it for about $10,000. Bottle of Windex, a roll of Bounty, and I could get that spacesuit straightened out. And I could also build a case for it. That would be climate controlled. I'll pocket the other $490,000. A Kickstarter campaign from the Smithsonian. Aren't they supposed to be loaded? I'm just saying. Something just doesn't smell right. This is Fade to Black, the Monday edition. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. When I come back after the break, we'll be joined with Race Hobbs. That's right. We'll be talking about this Stephen Hawking announcement today. It's going to be a great night tonight. Micah Hanks, Peter Levenda. It is Monday, July 20th. I'll be back right after this with Race Hobbs.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Hi, this is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Today, everybody, the Fadernauts and planet Earth is vaping. And I'm very proud to announce our very own e-juice. When we were approached by City of Angels Vapor about Fade to Black e-juice, I wanted to make sure that it was the very best and that the flavors were something that I could create myself. And we did just that. Introducing Fade to Black Fader Loops. This will take you right back to Saturday morning cartoons and your favorite bowl of Fruity Loopy cereal. Just click on the banner or go to www.coavapor.com. Enter the promo code Jimmy for the Fader Not special. That's www.coavapor.com. Go back, Lee Tappy.
Hi, this is Race Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church. Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station.
Imagine no longer being tied down to your computer, but having the freedom to take live talk radio with you anywhere you go. TalkStream Live introduces our first ever iPhone application. The talk shows you follow now follow you, and your iPhone is now the fastest and easiest way to stay connected to the best talk radio on the internet. Let TalkStream Live transform the way you listen to radio. Listen to live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mobile talk radio from TalkStream Live. Now available in the iTunes App Store.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
Yes.
We're of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
Attention, all Fadernauts. Studio Dome has a special deal on their SD1 Bluetooth speaker. Just go to JimmyChurchRadio.com, click on their banner, enter the promo code Jimmy, and you get $40 off and free shipping on the SD1. It's voice activated, comes with a USB antenna, cables, and a carry bag. Never listen to your phone, tablet, or laptop speakers ever again. It's the only way to listen to Fade to Black. That's JimmyChurchRadio.com, Studio Dome banner, promo code Jimmy. Go back, Lee Tappy.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, right, everybody, welcome back. This is Fade to Black, the Monday edition, bespoke radio for the masses on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, the planets. Tomorrow night, Jim Mars is going to be here. Graham Bonnet of Rainbow and Bonnet and Alcatraz and Michael Schenker Group is going to be here with us. I'm going to light this up on Twitter right now. Graham Bonnet, what's your favorite Graham Bonnet song? Is it going to be from Michael Schenker? Is it a Rainbow cut? Because we all know how I feel about Down to Earth, one of the greatest albums of all in rock and roll right there. Well, tomorrow night, Graham Bonnet is going to be right here with us. And then, of course, Wednesday, we'll be joined right here with Clifford Stone.
550-45. You can also
Race.
14. It's Fade to Black.
Race.
Yes.
Okay, you got to kill the audio, man.
Bring your A game. Little rock.
I've got something coming in the background.
It's your Thursday show playing my headphones.
Okay, you want to kill it?
It's not on my end.
It's going out on my end.
I do this every night.
It's going out on my end right now, live.
Yeah, I was listening to it in the break, and I thought,
okay.
What in the world? Wait a minute. This is not Fader Night.
Okay.
Love the smell.
Race.
Yes.
Click on something.
There's nothing for me to click on, brother. It's not on my end.
Okay, it's playing live here.
I love it.
So it's coming in from you.
As soon as I answered the Skype call from you, it was playing.
Okay, this doesn't make any sense. Because I have nothing going on over here. This is bizarre.
Try calling me back.
Okay.
Our dedicated nutritionists and have been.
This feed is coming in from somewhere. Wow, what a trip. Okay, let's do that. It's still there.
How does Jimmy do it?
Where is this coming from? Somebody figure this out. I am going through, I am just tripping. Okay. I think it's got to be Racy. Okay, let's call Racy back. Let's see if he's got it figured out. That is so bizarre. It's like a Twilight Zone here. Racy.
Did you figure it out?
Did you figure it out?
I didn't.
It dropped. Okay. All right, Racy. See, I'm not there. I can't see what you're clicking on.
No, there's nothing for me to click on. All I've clicked on is Skype. I don't have anything else on here.
So you're saying you came into this show.
You know it was on your end. Don't you blame me, boy.
Where would I get last Thursday's show?
I don't know. I have no idea. But I mean, I could hear after I hung up with you. I could still hear it on your feed. So I know it wasn't on my end.
Wow.
We sound good now.
Yeah,
we should be.
Somebody is messing with us, man. Somebody is tweaking. What kind of code writer, hacker would be, out? What would it take to insert another feed into our line? I suppose it would be of course anything is possible.
Well, let's just go Becky Tappy.
Yeah, right.
Let's just go Becky Tappy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about this thing today with Stephen Hawking. Have I ever told you when I met Hawking? I ever tell you that story?
No, I've never heard that one yet.
I got good ones, man. Elvis, whoever. Frank. I no matter who you bring up, I seem to have a story tied to it. But I do have a Stephen Hawking story. And I feel the urge. I do have photographs of our said meeting, so they're out there. But this is what happened. And I'll post tomorrow. I'll dig them up after the show, and I'll post the pictures of what happened.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah. I walk into, and this is one of those stories that you just can't make up. I walk into Burbank Airport, which is small, 2 terminals. And I'll walk into the United Terminal, and it's empty. And in the middle of the terminal, again, it's only one set of gates. That's it. Uh-huh. And in the middle of the terminal, there's only one baggage area, one thing. It's very small. It's like Mayberry, right? And in the middle of the terminal, I walk in, I see this guy in a wheelchair. It's obviously Hawking. I don't know what's going on. He's by himself, and there's all this luggage, like 10 pieces of luggage are lined up on the floor, and they're all open, and they're all white. They're white pieces of like road cases, right? Like white road cases, and they're all flipped open. And so I'm alone, and the terminal's empty, and I walk up and I look and I'm like, holy crap, it's Stephen Hawking. And he's by himself, right? And I step up. I got to make this story really short because it's very long. And I step up to him and I look at him and I go, holy crap, you're Stephen Hawking. And I couldn't tell if he's looking at me. I can't tell. But he's in that fancy wheelchair with the computer and the screen and everything. And I walk in back of him, and I look at the computer screen, and it immediately says, "Hi, are you the police?" Right? And I go, "No, man, I'm not. I'm just a guy. I was in a suit." And he goes, I need the police." And I was like, "Well, what's going on?" And right as I say that, this lady comes running up. "Are you the police? Are you the police?" I go, "What?" She goes, "Somebody went through our luggage and stole a bunch of stuff." And I go, "That's Stephen Hawking, isn't it?" Right? She goes, "Yes. Somebody stole our luggage. Can you help us?" And it went from there. It was just hilarious. There's a lot more to the story.
My goodness.
She literally says to me, "Stay right here with Mr. Hawking, and I'll be right back." So I'm standing there, doo-dee-doo-doo, with Stephen, and what do you do? So I have a conversation with him, and we talk, and I'll tell more about that later. And I took out my cell phone. I started taking selfies with Stephen Hawking.
Right on. That's what you do.
I had to. And there you go, man. Happened a couple of years ago. True story.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. You wonder, who was after his luggage.
It was weird. She said that somebody went through and took all of his medical stuff out of it, whatever that meant. But yeah, I don't know. Medicine, I guess. Needles, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. But all of the luggage, and like I said, it was like 10 big cases. They were all open. And she said when it came in off of the luggage thing, everything was spilling out everywhere. And it was bizarre, man. He was by himself. I stayed with him. I rolled him onto a van. The whole thing, man. It was trippy. It was
on. Jimmy to the rescue.
It was a bizarre, I'll post the pictures. They're really, really, really and I felt guilty. He knew, I was like, dude, can I take a picture? And immediately, I don't know how he does it, how he types so fast. But, popped up right there, sure. And I said, look, man, just mad respect, but I'm just a guy. I'm not the police, but I'll help you out. And he's like, well, thank you. And it was a trip, man. So I took selfies with Stephen Hawking.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Yeah, easy. But yeah, really happened. Okay, so a big announcement today, and you immediately responded with an article. What was? I'll start with you. What's your take on it, and what do you think?
Well, this morning, as you alluded to earlier, Yari Milner, he is sort of a Silicon Valley entrepreneur who's, multi-millionaire upon millionaire. And he was at the Royal Society this morning, joined by Stephen Hawking and Frank Drake and some other preeminent scientists to make a huge announcement, in my opinion, in regards to a $100 million global breakthrough initiative to reinvigorate the search for life in the universe. And it's basically based off of Frank Drake and his SETI work, which is, I guess, around 55 years old now. And although it was plagued with financial issues over the years and sort of existed on the fringes of science, it managed to carry on and continue its work all the way to this very day, extending its reach into the optical realm of discovery and research. And this morning, these guys all came together at about 6:30 Eastern time, our time, in London, to make this huge announcement. And And it's the first of two initiatives that, are going to be announced. The Breakthrough Listen initiative will be the most powerful of the two. It's a comprehensive and intensive scientific search that's it's never been undertaken before at this level. They're looking for signs of intelligent life beyond Earth by reaching out to the nearest million stars in the Milky Way galaxy. And not only that, Jimmy, they're going to reach out to the nearest 100 galaxies as well. And it's just unprecedented to have, someone come forth with $100 million to back these preeminent scientists in a really aggressive and science-worthy endeavor.
Well, two things I came away with, maybe even three from this. One, they were pretty assertive in stating that they're going to cover 10 times more of the sky than any previous program. They're going to be monitoring 5 times more of the radio spectrum. I've had Seth Shostak on the show before talking about the selection of radio frequencies and why they choose what they choose. Well, now they're stating they're going to monitor 5 times more of the radio spectrum, and that it's going to be 100 times faster. And in a weird way, are they belittling SETI's research in the past? That's one thing I felt from it. But also, SETI's been surviving on like $1 million a year. Uri's coming in with 100 million clams to cover 10 years. And they say that they're going to discover life, prove alien existence within 10 years. That's pretty strong, don't you think?
Well, I think this is something that's been in development for some time. NASA came out a little over a month and a half ago, talking about they're going to be able to prove life exists in the next 20 years or so. And as significant as that was, we know that science has taken a serious look, due to the understanding of the Goldilocks zones and these planets that we're able to observe now, being that we can reach out farther in space than ever before. And we're talking about like 9 million volunteers here, Jimmy, around the world donating their spare computing power to search for astronomical data and signs of life. And collectively, we're talking about the largest supercomputers in the world. And they're going to have significant access in this project to 2 of the world's most powerful telescopes. So, it's going to really, really ramp up their efforts. It's a huge undertaking. The Boyd Green Bank Telescope is the world's largest fully steerable telescope. And so, that's going to expand their direction in many ways. Drake started out with Arecibo. No, he didn't start out with Arecibo. He had like an 85-footer. Arecibo's like 1,000. But, he never gave up on this dream. He never gave up on this project. And, he and Carl Sagan and many others worked on this project for many, many, many years. And then, rest in peace, Carl Sagan passed away. But, Drake, he managed to carry it on. And now, with the financing from Uri, these guys. And, I heard a lot of chatter today, Jimmy, about, is this Hawking, kind of changing his tone about ETs and this and that. And I don't think that's the case. And I'm waiting for further announcements. But and they're coming in real time, and you'll be able to go to the website and take a look every day and see what they've added. But Hawking has always maintained, I think, that extraterrestrial life is out there. It just couldn't get to us from those distances.
Well, what he did say was that you wouldn't want to let ET know that we're even here. That's what he was really outspoken about, that they will not have the best of intentions. And why just let them know we're here? Because now they have a place to go, and when they get here, they're not going to be what you want to deal with in a very negative way. He was very outspoken about this, and for him to take an about face, I think, is strange. I don't understand. I just don't understand it, because it is a 180-degree turn. And the other thing that I thought was pretty interesting, how they stated that they were going to take the Silicon Valley approach to discovering aliens when you had, what's his name, from Microsoft investing into SETI and spending all the money on all of the telescopes, the radio telescopes, the dishes. Wasn't that a Silicon Valley approach? I always thought that was. So it seems like they were taking a few stabs at a few different people at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. You took the words right out of my mouth. He definitely, believed in the existence of ETs, but in the grand scheme of things, he was worried more about a Trojan horse sort of a situation where, we reach out and we broadcast signals and send out, probes and things that we're here and where to find us. And the possibility that we may run upon, an aggressive species out there is just as imminent as a, benevolent species. So,
well, in that instance, let me ask you directly: what's your opinion? I mean, it's my opinion that ET is already here, and they're fully aware of this, and they've been visiting here for, hundreds of thousands of years. Why wouldn't they know that Earth exists? But if we do send out and make contact, do you think that ET, if they're an advanced civilization, that they would come here, pissed off, with guns blazing?
Well, you have to sort of consider the notion that the ETs, as we call them, that we experience here on Earth and that some have experienced here on Earth, might very well be interdimensional and not physically traveling here from, light years away. And there very well may be two different kinds of contact, or maybe even more. There may be an interdimensional contact, and then there may be just a physical contact. It's a long distance. It is a long way to the next system. And, to think about how long it would take us now to get to Saturn or to Jupiter, to think about going to another solar system in this galaxy is just, it'll crack your skull trying to do the math if, you have a 12th grade level like myself. But, in the grand scheme of things, there could be more than one way we could be reached. And very well, the interdimensional, brand of contact might not be as threatening. It may be more sort of a mental control and a mental manipulation type thing, where a physical interaction with a real physical entity would be much different. And I want to believe, to answer your question, I want to believe that any species that has survived the time it would take to develop the kind of technology to get here would certainly have gone through everything we've gone through so far and farther to understand that life is precious, and, this tribal warfare stuff is just a waster of time. And that they would be benevolent, but there's no guarantee for that.
Well, and this is the third thing that I came away from this announcement today, is they are looking for proof of alien life. That's their stated goal, that it's out there. So could it be, and this is how my brain works, as soon as I read this is exactly what I thought about, which is, they are going to prove that everything that we have been talking about in the visitation for the last, 100,000 years or whatever, that, yes, that everything that we thought is actually true, and here is where they're coming from, and that they have been here. And it's a form of disclosure, and it comes from the back end. We find out from Stephen Hawking and their research that they actually do exist, and then it allows an out for all of the governments around the world that have been in denial about the ET presence. Interesting, very, very interesting, Jimmy. Yeah, that's that's definitely interesting. But with what supports that, really, another thing, while I think about the research I was doing on the article this morning, how they're going to do this, in the public eye. I mean, it's, it's all supposed to be done out in the public. The most data ever presented on such a research venture
all in the light of day. And you know what, Jimmy? I'm going to start putting pen to pad, because the international competition to create digital messages that represent humanity and planet Earth are in the works, and there is a grand prize. The pool I read would total like something around $1 million for the messages selected. So, I need some money.
Well, just imagine, and I'm serious. When I read, I just read between the lines. If they prove, that there's contact, and they make contact, and they make an announcement in 2 years, in a year, in 6 months, and 3 years, that yes, there's alien life and it's coming from here. Suddenly we get the softball from Washington, D.C. thrown out. Well, okay, I guess it does exist, but we didn't know that.
I don't think that's possible, though, really. I mean, we didn't know that. I think they would more like come out, we didn't understand what we were up against, what we were working with, what we were researching fully, and we'll probably try to marry that together. Because honestly, every American, every human being who employs a government to protect them will understand that if the government that protects them comes up against something it doesn't understand and doesn't know how to defend against, that it's better they keep it quiet and not panic everybody until they have to come forward with the information. I really think we can all understand that. Given that, that's a very interesting notion that this could be sort of, like you said, the softball approach to to lay it in on on most of the population that doesn't follow this. And that's the people that we really have to be concerned with, are the ones that are still plugged in, Jimmy. And so, with that's very interesting, and it very well may be.
Yeah, well, what you just said, when that the government could possibly say something like, well, we didn't understand, we didn't know what we were dealing with. Again, that's the softball. That's the out. This gives them the opportunity to cover up the mess that they have created for themselves, certainly since 1947. And just to say, look, we didn't know, but now here's the proof. Okay, so now we can go back and look at history together. But it's their out. It's the way to avoid anarchy in the streets.
And they'll have plenty of time, Jimmy, to pick and choose, to sort of nitpick what they want to let go and still keep the rest hidden away. So that would work. That would definitely work now that I put some brain to it. Because there are many instances where we know we've got them with their pants down, so to speak. And then there's other instances where it's not quite so. We've got just a little bit on something that's, we have a little bit of truth on something that's really more large in scope than we realize. So, this would be a way to deliver to the masses a truth that people like you and I have known for 25 years.
Well, the high technology that prevented civilian from doing this kind of research was never, we didn't have access to it. But now we do. And now we have a guy that wants to come along with 100 million ducks quacking in the pond. He can go and tie into whatever he needs to. Technology is there. It's available to everybody now to do this. It was only a matter of time before somebody was going to come along with deep enough pockets to do something like this. But now it's not in the government's hands. It's not in their control.
Right.
Completely. And so now they have to figure out a way to be prepared for when the disclosure happens because of us and not because of them. They control the pipeline of knowledge to mass media and to us, but now that's not in their control. So they have to do something when a guy comes along and wants to tie in the internet and have the money to pay for this and to pull it off. It's not in their control anymore.
Absolutely. I agree 1,000%. I just look forward to I really look forward to what's to come out of this project.
Well, yeah, and see, now this is the other thing here. Maybe Hawking knows something that we don't. And maybe this alien contact is a foregone conclusion. They know where to point those dishes at. They know what to do, and it's they're not going to search for anything. And that's another. Well, if you know what I mean, it's not going to be arbitrary. It's not going to be a random discovery. They're going to know where to point these things, and it's kind of, you have to look at that when you look at a mass media press release like this today. You got to read between the lines. You got to flip the story over and try to really figure out what's trying to be said here. I find it very, very, very interesting. There's something here that we don't know. There's something going on that we don't know. And to say that they're going to make this discovery within 10 years, what is it that they know? You know what? There's something funky here, Race.
Well, I mean, to bring in Drake, who, pretty much has null data return as far as extraterrestrial confirmation over all of these years, some 55 years. They put together a very interesting panel to present this when, the University of Cambridge, University of California, Santa Cruz. I mean, there is Cornell University, Berkeley. There are huge academic universities behind this project. Huge. And that drives home a very, very, very important point about reading between the lines. Open data, open source, an open platform, of a program that's generating vast amounts of data that will be open to the public. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be very, very interesting. And Jimmy, we may be talking a couple of years down the road about us doing this show tonight when you said you're going to say, Race, you remember when I told you the softball?
I know. It's going to be great. Hey, Race, thank you, man. And thanks for the article today. It was amazing.
Thank you, Jimmy. It's always an honor to be on your program. And the Fadernauts rock. You know I love you all.
Race Hobbs, everybody. Thank you, Race. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. I'll be back with Micah Hanks right after this short break. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRAradio.com.
Hey, everybody, what's up? Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and check this out. The 2015 MUFON Symposium will be held this September 24th through the 27th in beautiful downtown Irvine, California. Expanding ufology, opening new doors in academia, industry, and media. Former Defense Minister of Canada Paul Hellyer will be there in person. Former CNN news anchor Cheryl Jones, TV news journalist Jaime Maussan, and MUFON's chief photo analyst Mark D'Antonio. They're just a few of the growing list of names for the 2015 event. It's September 24th through the 27th at the beautiful Hotel Irvine. Get your tickets today at MUFONSymposium.com. That's MUFONSymposium.com. Go Beckley Tepe.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Did you ever turn to your radio for your favorite talk show to find that it's been preempted for this?
In the air, to deep right center. Back goes Lewis to the wall, and it's out of here!
Or this?
And I'm ashamed of you, Hillary, for voting for it.
Do you have a favorite talk radio program that's not available in your city? Just go to TalkStreamLive.com for links to the best streaming talk radio shows. At TalkStream Live, you will find live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All your favorites are here. With such a large selection, you will also discover some new favorites. On the go and still want to listen? With a mobile smartphone, simply type TalkStream Live on your internet browser. Now you can take internet radio with with you. You will also find hundreds of music, news, and sports streams. Best of all, the TalkStream Live directory is free and there's never a login required. Remember TalkStreamLive.com, the fastest route between you and your favorite talk radio show.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Okay, here we go. Ciao.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Today is Monday. It is the Monday edition. Thank you to Race Hobbs. That was some pretty interesting days we have ahead. Stephen Hawking gets involved with 100 million clams, and life will change as we know it very quickly. And so tonight, Micah Hanks is here with us, and then later on, Peter Levenda will be joining us. Tomorrow night, Jim Mars, Graham Bonnet from Rainbow. I wonder if Micah even knows who Graham Bonnet is. I'm not too sure about Micah's musical taste. Micah, how are you tonight, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great, brother. Oh, hold on, wait. You're not too sure about my musical taste. That means one of two things: you don't know, or you're like, man, he's got some iffy stuff he's into.
Well, this is what I do, Micah. It's kind of funny when I bring people on. One of the things, just to figure out what makes somebody tick, I'll ask about, musical taste. What did they listen to growing up? What CD is in your car right now? What was the last thing that you listened to? So I'll throw that out to you right now. What was the last song that you listened to before tonight's show?
Before tonight? Well, I should preface this by saying that I did my own show from 6 to 8. Then I took a little bit of time off. Made a couple of phone calls, including a call to you, and then a seminar with Jim Harold. So I haven't had time to listen to much music.
But you have a band.
I do, yeah, and I perform as a musician. The last song I listened to, I'm trying to remember what that would have been. It would have to have been traveling in the car, so it probably was something obscure that I wasn't even aware of. But when it comes to what I like to listen to, I'm all over the board. I mean, I can listen to everything from, classic rock to heavy metal, to classical music, to Irish fiddle, to folk music, to world music. I mean, I play bluegrass, but I, have a rock and roll background. I mean, I'm like a big GNR fan. I play a Les Paul, and I think a hard rocker at heart, and yet there's this soft side. So I'm across the board, man. I can't pick one thing I like.
Micah Hanks just dropped Guns N' Roses. Okay, all right. Okay, tomorrow night we're going to have Graham Bonnet on the show.
Yeah.
Were you a big Graham Bonnet fan growing up?
Okay. Not a huge fan growing up. I mean,
his big hit, well, he's had a few, but one of the first things that come to mind is Since You've Been Gone that he did with Rainbow. You remember that? That was a huge hit.
Rainbow, right? This was Richie Blackmore.
Yep. Richie Blackmore.
Yeah.
So he'll be on with us tomorrow night, and he is. He's a great friend of the show and stuff. But I just respect what he has done. He's just some of the biggest tracks of all time.
Yeah, there's so much good stuff out there. I mean, again, when it comes to classic rock and stuff like that, God, there's so much good music, so much good stuff. And you got a background in all that, though, too. I know on the production side of things, right?
Yep. I've been blessed. I've worked with all the greatest. It's weird. It sounds like an airplane is taking off in the background. What is that?
That's a good question.
Is that just you and I?
Are we being monitored right now?
Yeah.
Again?
Is it clean on your end?
No, I hear the airplane, too. I wonder what that's all about.
Yeah, I'm in the bunker here. So,
you got a bunker too?
Yeah, I got a bunker, man. I've got no windows. It's sealed, and it is dead quiet in here.
Well, we might be able to fix this. I'll tell you what I'm going to do, and I hope your listeners don't mind. This is on the fly. This is what we call on the fly. A couple of pros just having a little fun. I'm going to send you a request from my secret account, and let's see if we can correct that little problem. What do you say, huh?
Okay, that's interesting. Let me go back, and let's see here. I'm waiting for the request to come in, and I'm wondering what the secret name is going to be once it gets here.
The secret name, yeah, it might not be as secret as you'd expect, but we'll see. We'll see what you think of it when it happens, nonetheless.
Okay, it hasn't come in yet. You've sent it?
It should be coming through in just a moment. Meanwhile, I want to know a very important question here, Jimmy. How's the weather out your way? Because without questions about the weather, again, normal people wouldn't have anything to talk about in the daily life. So,
well, yeah, we got rain the last 2 days, and it never rains in Southern California. So yeah, we had rain for the last 2 days. Wow, this noise is getting loud. I wonder what that is.
It's weird that's causing that. Worst comes to worst, though, what we'll also try doing is we could also try the old-fashioned phone.
Well, and it's dying away again. It dies away when you speak.
Really? I'll just keep talking. That's something I'm very good at, by the way.
A couple of things I wanted to ask you about. I wrote an article the other day called "The Anatomy of a UFO Hoax."
Right.
And did you read it?
I didn't get the chance to read that entire thing, as busy as I've been, but it's a subject that I'm extremely interested in and something that I've certainly looked at an awful lot over the years. What exactly does constitute a UFO hoax? But don't let me interrupt you with that.
Well, I want your opinion. What happened to me was this: I get a hold of a picture of a triangle. And pretty interesting shot. Very clear, very nice shot in the clouds. But along with that, I get an entire story. And with that story, okay, I got your new request in. You know what?
While you're talking there.
Okay, I'm going to do a quick click. You just let's say goodbye, and then I'll bring you back in. And so there you go. Okay, so in this new request, let me see here. Let me go down and let me find the new one. We're going to do this in real time, not that big of a deal. And let's see here. There it is. Boom. Done. Hey, Micah.
Hey, Guy. How you doing?
Clean as a bell. Clear as a whistle.
Amazing how that happens, huh?
Yeah, that's really interesting. But
yeah, exactly. I'll tell your other guests how to do that one of these days.
Yeah, right. So I get this image, and along with the image, I get a story about 11 witnesses taken in the morning outside of Albany, New York. I get the location, I get the time, I get the occupation of the said photographer, that he's a pilot and he doesn't want to go public. And I'm in communication with the person that had this shot on his iPhone. And I get everything together, and I'm getting ready to write up an article about it and then release it to one of the big websites out there. And so the guy that runs the website, I don't want to say who it is, but
sure,
who runs with integrity. And and he trusts me, and we're friends, and so I want to make sure that everything is together, and I'm getting last-minute updates on everything. And then I do a very simple Google search, and time it, and then boom, I'm flooded with more images of the same that were different, but were taken at the same time, but were published in 2011 with another story attached to it. And,
really?
Yes, and it wasn't.
Oh,
yeah, it wasn't a male photographer; it was a female photographer, and it was a different look. It wasn't even in the same state. Now we're dealing with like South Carolina, and I was just like, and immediately I pumped the brakes. I then went and continued the research into around the same period, and I find the same photographs on a bunch of other sites that were published at the same time in 2011. Hoax. Everything that this guy said to me, that these pictures were supposedly taken last week. Okay, and the whole story involved with it, with the photographer, and it was like everything was made up. Why would you do that? Why would you go? It could be no harm, no foul. Maybe he just thought, hey, I'll send this image to a friend of mine off of my phone and say, hey, check this out. Look what I took this morning. Not realizing that in 6 degrees of separation, the guy that you're sending this to is connected to the host of a radio show and radio shows, television, and everything else, and this could propagate into a viral situation very, very quickly. What do you do? I know you've had experiences like this. What do you do when this crosses your path?
Well, after I pull out my hair, and I'm upset about it, because how else are you supposed to feel when you realize, okay, somebody thought I was dumb enough to take me for a ride. Years ago, somebody sent me a video of a bunch of Mylar balloons all tied together, and they sent them up into the air over Mexico City. And I joked, I even in the article said, in likelihood, we're looking at a cluster of Mylar balloons. But there's the outside possibility that this could be an interdimensional sky squid that we're seeing. And would you believe somebody goes on their blog and said, this Micah Hanks guy has got to be the dumbest, insert your expletive here, because they saw the sky squid joke and they didn't see the fact that I'd acknowledged we're looking at Mylar balloons. It was my own, smart aleck way of saying, God, people try, at least if you're going to try and pull the wool over people's eyes. When it comes to the hoax and the anatomy of a hoax, Jimmy, we have a lot of factors that we have to take into consideration here. We've got to take into consideration, for instance, what motivates a person? Are they trying to make money? Are they trying to, gain notoriety and fame? What's really weird is that sometimes these hoax videos are uploaded. They appear online, and there doesn't appear to be any kind of a financial motivation, and there's no name attached to it. I think that some people. Do you remember, Jimmy? By the way. Was it in The Dark Knight, where Michael Caine says, my strange men just like to watch the world burn, And I think that that's the truth. Some men just want to watch the world burn. They don't want notoriety. They don't want, fame and fortune. They just want to create something that muddies the water, and they love the feeling of being able to kick back, watch it, laugh at all the gullible fools who watch it and who don't get it. And that's the problem with people who are legitimately interested in UFOs. And look, you know me, man. You know me. You, above all people, probably know me. I'm not somebody who is very quick to jump to any kind of conclusions about UFOs. The one thing that I will steadfastly maintain, and on KGRA, we've had a great night for radio tonight because, we've had Peter Robbins on with Richard Dolan. You and I are on here tonight, talking. Race was on there with you. A lot of people who are of like mind and not necessarily always of like mind. Sometimes we differ greatly in our opinions, but we're all people who are steadfastly devoted to trying to separate the proverbial wheat from the chaff, trying to separate the obfuscation and the silliness from the bona fide, the legitimate reports that occur. And I believe that there are good ones, and so I steadfastly maintain that you can't just say that all UFOs are bunk and that there's nothing to any of this. You mentioned these triangles. Again, this was the object of the hoax that you were talking about here that you helped unravel, but the broader narrative about these triangles, it's absolutely almost uncanny, otherworldly kind of stuff. And you think about, for instance, Jimmy, and when people ask, how do you separate the hoaxes from the more legitimate instances of purported phenomena, I'll give you a good example of how to do that. You have people who will tell you stories, and then you've got multiple witness encounters, military bodies, agencies, air forces, police departments, that report seeing these things, that report seeing large, silent, slow-moving, triangular-shaped objects with different weird light configurations, and sometimes certain parts of what you might, for lack of a better term, call the anatomy of the aircraft that remove themselves and move independently of the major aircraft being observed. Some people liken them to being blimps or stealth blimps. Some people call them all kinds of things. We look at all this stuff, there are absolutely good UFO reports. And, it's troubling when you see that sometimes not even as many of the hardened skeptics would say there's always a financial motive or something. No, sometimes people do just want to watch the world burn. They don't care if their name or if any kind of monetary reward is associated with it. They're going to put hoaxes out there just for the sake of just screwing people's minds, and messing with them. That's the biggest problem that we face, I think, when it comes to trying to, discern the anatomy of a hoax. And we can't lose sight of the fact that I think that, again, I'm not trying to advocate, ET overlords coming down and visiting, dropping in, having picnics with people. Look, whatever the UFO phenomena is, step away from trying to make judgments. Say there is a phenomena. We're all working toward that goal, no matter what we believe it is. Let's try and figure that much out, and then we'll move on to the second step. But before we get to step B, let's say we can acknowledge that there are some good reports, but discerning what the good ones are becomes all the more difficult when we know that there are idiots out there who don't have any modus operandi apart from just trying to confuse people. And so, in conclusion, I don't mean to go off on a monologue here, Jimmy, but I mean, it's a really good article, a really good idea and a really good discussion that you're bringing to the table here, because this is something that has to be addressed. How do you separate the good from the bad in these kind of reports? That's really, really important to me.
I just sent you all of the images. Are you looking at them now?
I'm looking at them right now. I am.
Okay. Now, when you go to the first one at the top, as you can see, it says published in 2011. Okay. And then you go to the second one, published in 2011. I was only sent one of those. You see the one that says published in 2015. That's the one that was sent to me. And so check that out. Now, that's a pretty exciting picture. When you look at it, if you go to the 2015 one, and you look at that and you think, man, that's pretty good stuff. And, and it's enough to get excited over. And
apart from the fact that they didn't change the font they used on the published date.
No, that's mine. That's mine.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, aren't you just a funny guy? So, but when you look at that, it's a pretty interesting. And you look at the altitude. Okay, that's enough to raise an eyebrow and listen to the eyewitness testimony that comes along with it. I've got 11 witnesses that were there. It was a pilot. It was taken in the morning. It was taken in Slingerlands outside of Albany, and all of this information that comes along with it. So I immediately said, can I get this pilot to come on the show? He doesn't have to identify himself. Didn't even have to tell himself he's a pilot. We called him the pilot in our conversation so we knew who we were talking about. Well, he wants to say silent. Well, he can. All he's got to do is just tell us who, what, where, and when, and he could leave the air. That's no big deal, but he was the guy that took the picture, so just let him come on and tell us what the day was like. Maybe there was somebody else in the area that saw the same thing. Did anybody else see something strange in the sky over Slingerlands? And everything looked legitimate coming along with it. And then when you uncover the pictures that I just sent you from 2011, now there's additional photographs. And it it crushed me. And I immediately backpedaled and went to the website and said, look, you know what? No, there's nothing to this story, because I had sent the photographs out.
But you can't be crushed, though, Jimmy. I mean, you did the right thing. You realized, okay, you took it the step further that most people wouldn't. You at least looked far enough to be able to determine that this was not what it appeared to be. That to me is doing the right thing. I hate to say it, but there are a lot of people in UFO circles. I'm not going to name names right now because I try to show respect for people, but many would even argue that if you don't name names, then you aren't really showing respect to those who are trying to find answers. For the time being and for the scope of the conversation here, I'll just say that there are many researchers who have been criticized, and I think that many who are intimately familiar with this field like you and I are, they know that the criticisms arise from people who become beholden to sacred cows, and they are not willing to update their ideas and opinions over time when confronted, I would say, with evidence that may be in contrast to their previous opinions. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that's a big issue that you have to be willing to say, okay, God, everything I thought I knew about this, okay, it's bunk. Look, these photos, the ones that appeared up there, the Arctic photos of the Trepang, from the
Yeah, we can talk about that. Sure.
Well, yeah, you and I haven't gotten a chance to talk about this yet. I mean, and I was listening, when you had Miss Rada is his name, yeah?
Yeah, Mistrada.
Mistrada, okay. You had him on the show and everything, and one night he was having a hard time getting in. But, I'm looking at those photos, and then the first place I saw the higher quality images was from your Twitter account, and I'm looking at those thinking, yeah, gonna have to listen to Jimmy tonight, see what they have to say, and it's great that this, this is more than a radio show that you do. This is a network where, you may not know it at all times, but serious researchers tune in just to hear what's going on from time to time. And I'm looking at those images, and I was thinking, and I still think to an extent, a lot of the images, they do look like these target balloons. And there are many images that show the Navy using these, but then there's some of those photos that you can't really make out exactly what this thing is. We need more data. I don't think necessarily that it's a hoax, but then again, do we have enough data to be able to say that that's not what this is? And what's really interesting is that the testimony from the officer on board, which this gentleman, Sackett, his name, I'd wondered almost for a moment if it wasn't somebody that I knew, believe it or not. Turns out it wasn't. But I knew a gentleman with a very similar name, had the same last name, lived in South Carolina, the whole 9 yards, and I was like, don't tell me I know this guy. I didn't know him. I didn't know him at all. But it was an interesting set of circumstances, and as far as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't looked at this anymore in the last few days, but I don't think that there's been a final determination made about those photographs.
It's a very, very, very fluid story. We're getting information in every single day. When I say we, it's Alex Mistretta that is, the guy spearheading this. He's got a lot of help out there, and one of the reasons, with Steve Murillo and John Greenwald from the Black Vault, in that. What the way that this was going to be handled from the very, very, very beginning, we weren't going to go down the May 5th Mexico City road, and let's just publish the photographs, publish what we know. Here it is, and then let's see what the world can figure out. Now, the information is coming in daily. I'll say this, some of the latest, we're going to have Alex on again in a day or two because we have even more information coming in. I'll disclose part of it here in just a second. One of the things when Sackett was contacted and what his comments I think were the most telling in that he said, interesting photographs. I don't know what they are. Now, you would think that a rear admiral from the United States Navy would look at that and go, okay, those are target balloons. Okay, very simple. And Steve Murillo, and Steve Murillo graduated from the Naval Academy, man. He's a friggin' fighter pilot for the Marines. Yeah. You would think that he would know what a targeting situation would look like. And if that's what it is, no harm, no foul. Great, okay. But what we do know, what I do feel in looking at those photographs, the Trepang photographs, is that they are real photographs. We're not looking at some type of Photoshop manipulation. It looks like they were taken from either a periscope camera or from some type of targeting camera because you can see the lines in the photographs and some of them that look like, a periscope-ish.
No, they do. And Jimmy, I'd also say that they're less ambiguous than the typical photographs that may, out of context, be taken and interpreted as being something ufological. In this instance, it's pretty clear that there's an object. It's pretty clear that it's above the water, but it's airborne. It's pretty clear that this meets the criteria for various descriptions of UFO craft reported over the years, which include the infamous or famous, cigar-shaped object. In my book, The Ghost Rockets, I talk about a lot of reports of cigar-shaped objects, and I always tell people, please put that idea of UFO equals extraterrestrial aside for a moment. I'm not saying suppose that it's something else. Humans have a tendency that they think that they have to say, well, I see something and therefore we have to leap to the conclusion that it is this. It's okay to say that in probability, it is more likely to be this than something else. But if you really are going to try and be, in a healthy way, skeptical about something, I say withhold judgment and say, look, okay, we're seeing something. Let's not create some sort of a fabricated, silly story to try and explain what we're seeing. which I'll be honest, I mean, I find many skeptical commentators do that. I have seen some ridiculous stories cooked up by people trying to put together ridiculous, tenuous elements of a story to explain something when you don't have to go that far to do that, just to be skeptical. But let's also say, okay, this doesn't necessarily mean that that these are alien craft, whatever these things are. They may be some sort of secret military technology. They could be something that's non-military, but that is something privately funded that the Navy officers were just as concerned about and interested in as you or I might be looking at the photos. There are a lot of different scenarios. If we take time to think about it and say, look, to be fair, we have to look at all the possibilities. If we sit and think about it on those terms, we would come up with a lot of different possible scenarios for what these things are. And Race Hobbs, by the way, Race Hobbs and I have sat and done this. And we took it as far back, Jimmy, just talking. And this is purely conjecture, and I want to be very clear about that as I'm saying this, but Nikola Tesla, back in the old days, had said, I have a design. I have a design in my head. He says, I've visualized this. I will have an aircraft that won't have the kinds of unreliability that you see with airplanes. He says, I envision an aircraft that will be essentially an electric spacecraft. I see an aircraft that will be able to move through space electrically. It will be able to hover. It will be able to accelerate to great speed. There won't need to be wings or rudder for this craft to operate. Now, he never ever produced any actual blueprints, but we do know, of course, that the military acquired Tesla's files upon his passing from this mortal realm, and therefore we don't know exactly what. There may have been sketches, diagrams, illustrations, or anything that Tesla had designed, and that, again, is conjecture, but in interviews he had stated, look, I have a very clear concept for how we could design an electromagnetic aircraft, and something that wouldn't have to have wings or rudders. Now, what does that sound like? That isn't evidence that what we're seeing in the photographs, for instance, with the Trepang photos, that is actually some sort of a secretive aircraft along the lines of what Tesla had envisioned, but at least we have to take into consideration that there are people who have envisioned an aircraft of this kind actually being put into flight. And then we look at Captain Jack Puckett, 1946. With Strategic Air Command, he was headed to MacDill Air Force Base. Nearly collides with a elongated cigar-shaped aircraft with 2 rows of illuminated portholes. We had a similar incident that occurred over Europe. We had another incident that was reported that involved, it was what was called the Charles and Whitted encounter, and this is what Project Sign had investigated. One of the preeminent cases that led the researchers in the Project Sign study to, again, this was the hypothesis they put forward at the time. They said they thought that this was so far out it had to be something extraterrestrial. And so, now, another funny point that the skeptics will always point out is that there was the determination also that what Charles and Whitted, the pilots, had actually seen, rather than a large cylindrical or torpedo or cigar-shaped object with 2 rows of illuminated portholes and fire shooting out of the back, that maybe what they'd seen was a meteor. Okay?
Yes.
The very man who supposed that it was a meteor and actually backed that determination was J. Allen Hynek.
Yes.
But you got to keep in mind, too, that when he put that forward, he was, of course, the skeptic who was working for the Air Force. He was trying to bring a scientific approach to this. And when faced with the preponderance of evidence contrary to these again, seemingly strange phenomena that can always be explained by swamp gas, he was the guy behind that one just as well. Even Hynek, after a while, had to say, look, maybe some of these reports really are something else. And he didn't about face based on what he was observing on the data that he, as the science advisor to Blue Book, was asked to look at. So when the skeptics say, well, he debunked that himself, and Jacques Vallée seemed not to agree, well, the probable reason why they didn't agree was because Hynek may have looked back on that report and said, okay, I'd said it was probably a meteor at the time, but that was where my mind was at the time, too. Looking back, these pilots both said they saw an aircraft. One man who was on board that aircraft, a passenger, said that he saw a flash of light. That didn't really amount to a hill of beans, but both the pilots said they saw an aircraft. Neither of them said they saw a light streaking through the sky. They said it was a craft. It had windows. There were flames shooting out of the back. The thing was ascending, not coming down. It was ascending in altitude and headed up toward a cloud bank. So, again, we have to look even at what I think Hynek said about that and say from time to time, maybe ideas change. Hynek certainly did. later in life, how would Hynek have interpreted what was occurring in that instance? And how does that report compare with other reports of cigar-shaped objects? So, again, at least with these reports from the Trepang, that have surfaced recently, what we see is something that's undeniably an object. It appears to be hovering over the ocean. It appears to be airborne, and that's a lot more than the average UFO photograph or purported UFO photograph gives us. It really is. And so these photos, at very least to me, are interesting. We don't know what they are, but they're interesting at this point, and we have to take into consideration certain anecdotal data that seems to support objects that resemble what we see in the photographs, but they could be anything. We have to know more. So I'm really interested in this. I really am.
When you look at photographs today and you look at stuff, you can adjust your brain to historical knowledge. In that, if you have seen something similar to this before, you've got a reference point to it, and you could possibly look up other historical pictures, or you can say, hey, that looks like a dirigible, that looks like a biplane, that looks like a dog catching a frisbee. You have historical reference, but when I look at these pictures, and I know that you've done the same thing because you're not able to tie, it doesn't look like anything that you've seen before. That's the thing about the Trepang that is interesting to me. If it is some targeting blimp, why haven't we seen pictures of this exact thing historically in encyclopedias, online, anywhere where you can look at it and say, hey, I've seen this before? But you can't. You've said it yourself. It doesn't look like. It's interesting. We don't know.
It's similar, yeah.
Yeah.
Similar. It's similar to certain target balloons that have been used by the Navy in the past, and really, again, that seems the most plausible and likely scenario, especially with the images where you see the smoke and the fire all around the things. It looks like something that may have been shot. But, also some of the photographs, again, we don't have a whole lot of contextual information about the series of photographs. Some of them look like they were taken around the same time. Some of them don't look like they were taken around the same time. Some look like they go back to the 40s or 50s. Some look like they're from the 70s or 80s. Some are black and white, some are color. Some seem to show what appears almost to be an elongated triangular craft. That one really weird image of the really oblong thing.
Yes.
I mean, that's the one that just makes you go. I mean, I can look at the others and go, okay, it's probably a target balloon. Then I see some of those, and it reminds me of a story I was told, Jimmy, years ago. I was filling in for Joshua P. Warren on his radio show. And a guy called in, and this fella had been a military police officer, and he was stationed at the time. It was still in operation. It was Johnston Island, okay? Now, a bit of historical background about this. Johnston Island, or Johnston Atoll, this was actually the location where over Johnston Island, Operation Fishbowl, I think had been the broader name, but Operation Starfish Prime back in the 50s was the specific launch of a Titan missile into space, and the explosion, the detonation of a nuclear device over space, which resulted in not only this kind of a eerie orange, or this aurora kind of over the Pacific that evening, but also an electromagnetic pulse emanating downward actually knocked out the electrical grid near Hawaii, well, actually several parts of Hawaii, Honolulu specifically. So if you look up Operation Starfish Prime, you can find the Wikipedia page and a lot of articles about it, so there's plenty of info about that. You can learn all about it. This was the location, Johnston Island, okay? And back in the I guess maybe the 80s or 90s, this guy called in and said that he had been stationed on Johnston Island, and he said that on this occasion, the high brass, he said, there was a high brass, a general who had been visiting one of the higher ups that was stationed there on the island, this guy's direct supervisor, and he said that he was coming in off of the night shift guarding a military prison that was there on Johnston Island, and he says as we were coming in off the shift, he said all hell broke loose on the radars, and he said that people were really freaking out, and he said there was no question what was going on. All of us, all we had to do was look up. He said there was a dark circular object over the island, and he said, now you got to keep in mind, let's put this in perspective. The island's about a mile maybe wide, or a little less, maybe 2.5, 3 miles long. You can look up Johnston Island, by the way, on Google Maps. So, I mean, you can see this. Satellite images exist. I think the thing's actually been decommissioned. It's for sale right now. And you can see the old submarine path that they used to come in and park the subs down there. But so he said, this object, we weren't sure if it was descending or if it was just getting bigger. But he said, imagine if you had a perfectly clear piece of like fiberglass or plexiglass above you, and somebody was pouring black India ink, and you were just seeing a puddle getting bigger and bigger and bigger in front of you. He said that's what this looked like. And he said this thing kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And he said at one point, they were really, really scared. He said, I mean, everybody was at high alert on the island. Everybody was in radio control. And then he said there was this point at which he said the radio silence occurs where nobody says anything about what they're seeing. Everybody's looking at this incredibly large, round, black object hovering over Johnson Island. And he says the radios just go silent. I mean, what can you do? This thing's just hovering. Right. And he says, you know, we can talk about this all day, or we can just stand here and look at it and hope to hell this thing doesn't decide to land. And he says, as we're watching this was just before dawn, and he says on the horizon, he says the sun begins to rise, and he says the minute the sun rises and the first rays of dawn appear over the horizon, he says, as the sunlight strikes the sky, he says this thing just vanishes. And there's no longer any craft there. And you hear stories like this that guys in the military tell you of these objects that can just apparently just appear, and they're giant, and they're huge, and they're scary, and they're dark, and they're ominous, and then they just gone. And you look at these pictures, you know, from the Trepang, and again, those weird pictures of that weird elongated thing. That's what those pictures remind me of. These kind of stories that people, military police officers, Navy guys, people have told me for years. People have told me stories. I've interviewed so many individuals. I've got a recording. I've still got the recording of the guy talking about that thing he saw, and I've tried to track the guy down, can't find him. Talk about frustrating.
Well, when you look, the one picture that you bring up that I find is one of the most interesting. Well, it's two. It's the cone-shaped object, and then it looks like the cone-shaped object is now tipped on its side, and you can, you know, and it's sitting off on the horizon. It looks like, for the life of me, it looks like something that isn't blimp-sized. It looks like it's a couple of miles across. It looks huge, and it's got that tip, you know, that slightly triangulated bottom to it. That's the picture that you're referring to. And for the life of me, it looks like Independence Day. You know, it looks like an object that large sitting on the horizon, and that's when your brain doesn't compute. You look at that, and it doesn't quite fit anything that you've seen before, and you're confused. And that is the one pick out of all of these Trepang shots where you look at that, it doesn't look like a blimp, it doesn't look like some targeting thing. It looks like that triangular cone-shaped object is now tipped on its side. And I don't think it's morphed into anything. I just think that it tipped on its side, so you can see the cone shape is making this tip. You know, if I don't know how to explain it to the listeners, where it is, you know, it's still triangular because of the bottom of it, and there it is sitting off on the horizon, and it also is reflecting slightly off of the water. You can see the shadow of it on the water. Now, if that is something familiar to somebody in the Navy, Micah, why hasn't somebody come forward? These pictures, it's on thousands of websites now. Okay.
Well, I'll point out, by the way, too, that in my experience, and not to say that my experience is the only experience, you know, I mean, I'm not the kind of person whoever tries to be that bold and that assertive. You know, I realize there are varieties of opinion, varieties of experience, people who know a lot more than I do. And if guys like John B. Alexander can purportedly put together the advanced physics, you know, project and go around and debrief echelons of government and still come to no determination about anybody who knows anything in government about UFOs himself, I don't profess to know anything that he doesn't know, although I've met John, and, you know, I find what he has to say in his book pretty interesting. But what I have experienced, Jimmy, is when I'll do radio shows like this, I've had people call into me off the air and say, look, man, I'll tell you some stuff. And people have told me about everything from, you know, photographic recognition, exercises to, and what I mean by that is people being shown a photograph and then This later, it turns out to be some sort of a technique to try and see if this person will blab their mouth, off about what they've seen and what they've been shown in terms of a purported UFO photo. I've been told all different kinds of things that low-level officers in different organizations with the military, the U.S. Air Force, all things considered, will be put through sometimes to test their trustworthiness before they are promoted and things like this. Again, I don't have a background in Air Force or military, so I may have done a horrible job trying to explain that, but I've had many people explain these kinds of things to me off the record. So again, it's interesting to me that we have to be looking at this as one of two things. Somebody knows and they're keeping their mouth shut, and hence the oath that people take, the secrecy, the silence, is good, and people are good for it. Or those being interviewed and questioned about the purported object in the photographs, they really legitimately don't know what they're looking at. And we really don't have any real idea. And, that's where things become difficult. Although I think it's hard for me to imagine, knowing how many police officers, firefighters, military officers, Air Force servicemen who eventually do come forward. It's hard for me to imagine that nobody in the world, if this is something that the Navy employs regularly or something that would have been utilized at least fairly consistently during a particular time period in naval exercises, it's mysterious to me that nobody would come forward and say, yes, we recognize that, and I can tell you what that is. I mean, now, if it's still classified, I understand, but then again, a target balloon doesn't seem exactly like, the kind of super secret high-tech kind of technology, and if that were the case, why are there photographs of other naval target drones already available? It doesn't seem to me like this is something that should be kept secret. So there's interesting logical deductions, I guess, that could be made. We have record photographs, testimony, information, all kinds of data about other target balloons. Those who were purportedly on this submarine during this mission in that region at that time, they say they don't recognize it. So,
yeah, but that's exactly my point, Micah. If you are going to be a debunker, and in this case, we need that. This is the rare instance where we need a guy from the United States Navy to step forward and say, hey, this is what it is. Here's a picture. I took one, and here's the same object. Please just come forward so we could just move on with life. And it's one time where I need it. We all need it. Alex is asking for it. And you know what I mean? And it's the one time where nobody has stepped forward saying this is what it is. Now, there is also some breaking news. We'll have Alex either on the show tomorrow night or on Wednesday, that now it looks like possibly that there could be a Soviet progenitor to these photographs. The source could be out of the Soviet Union, which would answer why, when, you have a rear admiral literally saying, yeah, I was the guy, I was the commander of the submarine, but I don't know what these photographs are. They're interesting, but I don't know what they are. So maybe he just doesn't know what a Soviet target has looked like. They don't look like what we were shooting at. Now, that's a possibility, but maybe there could be a Soviet origin to these photographs. We're looking into that now. Like I said, it's totally fluid. And what I enjoy about this, something that you've been talking about, what I enjoy about this, it's like crowdsourcing. Let's crowdsource researchers. Let's get it out there. Everybody put your eyes on this. And do you know what you're looking at? Have you seen anything like this before? Please let us know. That's all. No harm, no foul. And now it looks like there might be a Soviet slant to this. Not sure. Again, it's totally fluid. We have put the information out there. But when I look at, and I just tweeted out the big photograph, what I call the big, that astronomical thing. Dude, that is big. I don't know what weird. I don't know what this object is, but I look at this and it's not Hindenburg sized. It's not, it's certainly not like the Goodyear blimp. This is something frigging big. So I don't know. Go ahead.
What's also weird, though, is that there's a certain symmetry to it, Jimmy.
It's totally symmetrical. When you look at it, you can split it right. Yeah, absolutely. Micah, if you draw a line down the center of this object, then you can see what's on the left is what's on the right. There's a couple of anomalies on the bottom edge of this craft, whatever it is, that is symmetrical. I don't know, man. I don't know what I'm looking at. My eyeballs just say, dude, I'm confused. And that's what's disturbing to me.
No, it is disturbing. There are moments where you're looking at these things. Tell me if you felt like this, Jimmy. There are moments where you're looking at it and you're going, God, what am I looking at? I mean, and then you just kind of feel okay, like here's how Hunter Thompson would describe it, the fear.
You're right.
You know what I mean? You feel the fear. You're thinking, my God, am I really looking at something? There is something, it's like 2001: A Space Odyssey, the obelisk. There's something ominous but inviting about the photographs. The object, you don't know what it is. And if it is what you think it might be,
the fear.
You get the fear. You know what I mean? Then the fear began to set in.
Yes.
It's a bit unsettling. And I'm looking at the photo right now. Walter Lewis, one of our friendly Fadernauts, has retweeted your tweet about the photo, and people are just going nuts on Twitter looking at this. Again, I'm looking at it again here and noticing all of these what appear to be I would call symmetrical features on this object. And it appears to be either the foreshortened perspective from the rear angle of a triangular object.
Yes.
Or something else that's just, again, this photo doesn't give us a whole lot to go off of. We don't really have a good idea of the size. We don't really have, we're given the impression that this is something large, but based on these photos alone, we really can't tell very much. One question, too, I noticed now that it's saying copyright U.S. Navy in the lower left-hand corner.
Yes.
Now, where did that come from?
Yes, exactly. We don't know. It looks like, you know what? You didn't say it. I thought you were going to go there. It's like the back-end shot of the battle cruiser in Star Wars, right? You know what I mean? So
it looks like it.
Well, for the listeners out there that aren't looking, if you just go to hashtag F2B, you can look at the images. They've been tweeted out. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. But the perspective that we keep referring to is when the battle cruiser, flies by and you're looking at the engines from the back and you can see that it's a triangle shape of that's what we're talking about. And that's the perspective. It's like the back end looking at the battle cruiser, and you can see that if that's what it is, then it is a huge triangle shaped object. It
appears to be.
It is an interesting photograph. And if there is something out there, whether it's the Soviet Navy, I don't think the Chinese would be, who else would be big enough to build something like this for target practice? Then there are objects out there that are this large that they're, using for target practice. I'll buy that story if we can back it up with some additional photographs so we just know we can put this thing to bed.
A couple of points. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
If it's not target practice, then we are looking at some earth-changing situations here.
Look, I'm going to tell you, and I try to maintain. So people, please take this into, put this in context, if you will. I try to maintain as skeptical an attitude about this as I possibly can. And I cannot deny, nor will I, the apparent obvious information before us, which is that there are objects, we don't know of what origin, but these are objects that are in operation in our skies, and these are objects of incredible technological fortitude, something that we can't quantify through conventional means. We can't say this is very easily some sort of U.S. project, some sort of a U.S. secret, operation, secret aircraft, some sort of an extraterrestrial. We can't say that very easily either. All we know is that these things are in operation. A couple of interesting points. Something that Nick Pope has said for years is that while he was with the mod, he said, yeah, you know what? There was this poster that we had, an enlarged image of the best UFO photo we were ever shown. It was like a diamond-shaped thing, and there were fighter jets, dodging this thing. He said that there was that photo, which, of course, Nick Pope has also said was apparently shredded or destroyed or something like that.
Well, what's interesting about that, and I'll let you finish your thought.
Sure.
Nick Pope had that hanging in his office for quite a long time. And then one day he comes in and the frigging thing is gone.
He said his superior officer was under the distinct impression that it was some sort of an experimental U.S. drone. Whether or not that was actually the case, this is the impression that the superior officer had, and the officer had, based on that, decided to take the thing down and destroy the image. We don't know if it was destroyed. It was taken down. Nick has often speculated about the fate of the of the image, and there was an article, I believe, it may have been the Mirror the other day, where Nick was questioned about this. But the other point I was going to bring up is that here's this instance where there's a brilliant photograph, which Nick has said, this should have been disclosed. We really want to see this by now. This was the best proof we saw during my years with the mod of a UFO. Hadn't seen this photograph yet, but it seemed to be something, and my officer, my superior, thought this was some sort of a U.S. secret project. Then we have, of course, in China, many years ago, this is not a well-known UFO story, but I ran into a fellow just by chance in a bar in Highlands, North Carolina, near the North Carolina-Georgia border, when I was writing my book, The UFO Singularity. And he told me he had a bachelor's degree in physics, and we started talking about UFOs. And I presumed he'd probably think I was silly, and I'm usually pretty hesitant to really, hey, what do you do? Are you just a musician all the time? And I told this fella, we'll call him Anthony, well, yeah, I write also, and so, getting around to the subject and everything, what do you write about? And I finally told him, I said, well, I'm writing a book right now, and this is what, he said, look, I'll tell you something, but it scares me so badly, I don't want you to ever use my name in relation to this. It really, really terrified him, and he got scared talking about it. He said what we watched was, for about 30 minutes, what appeared first as a bright white light in the distance. As it got closer, we saw colored lights. It was moving slowly. Once the object was close enough, he said he'd been traveling abroad, and he'd been visiting Beijing at the time, and he was in China with some friends, but he's a Western guy. And he said, as we're observing this object, he said it got close enough to where we could very clearly see the outline. It was huge, triangle-shaped. We're watching this thing as it moves along. And then he says, at some point, he said, we watched it as it takes off. And at this point, we've been watching for almost 45 minutes, this thing just moving through the sky slowly. And he said, we were all scared. We didn't know what it was. And he said, all of a sudden, it shoots to the right. He says it shoots to the left, it shoots to the right, shoots to the left, shoots to the right again. And then after this zigzag pattern, he says it takes off at blinding speed. And he says it leaves an arc of light behind it that he said seemed to give the impression that we could actually observe the curve as this thing had followed the curvature of the planet itself, of planet Earth. This curved light was left in the sky as though we were seeing the curvature of the Earth on the path that the thing followed.
Shut up.
He said, it scared me so badly. This is a physics student. He says, I've never had any UFO stuff. I've never believed in UFOs. This is what I saw, which, if you think about it, is very, very, very consistent with other reports of these triangle craft that move very slowly and then they can accelerate to an unprecedented speed. William R. Corliss, the American physicist, in his science source book said, I discount most UFO reports. I don't look at this stuff. I don't listen to these. But these reports coming from the Belgian area, from Belgium. This was, of course, back in the 1990s. Leslie Keynes did a great job documenting these, but, these were the Belgian Triangle reports from the early 1990s and late 80s. There were some that went back to the 1980s as well. But he said these reports are incredible. If we are to take it that these objects are moving as quickly as the radar operators and those on ground and in air are witnessing, these things are defying the known laws of physics, and yet we're seeing an incredibly large triangular-shaped object that is moving in a way that no object known to man moving through the air should be able to move. So what the hell are we talking about here?
Right. What an incredible description, the streak of light. It was moving so fast that it was, the contour of Earth. That's a bone-chilling description. Have you ever seen, and before I let you go, we're at the end of, we're at the top of the hour, and we've got Peter Levenda waiting to come on. And thank you, by the way, Micah, for coming on tonight.
Brother, always a pleasure.
You fascinate me, too. One of these days, we're gonna knock some shots back. And
I look forward to that.
You and I are going to have one incredible conversation. But have you ever seen the ISS? Have you ever seen the International Space Station? You ever stop and watch it go across the sky?
Numerous times. The first time it wigged me out because it was almost as bright as the moon and making no sound. And so I called my brother Caleb. I was like, there's something going overhead. But what I got was I hooked up with an app on my phone called
we have it too. Yes.
Yeah, and I frequently at night will watch iridium flares. I've never seen anything anomalous myself, is the thing. That's the problem. I'm waiting to see something that makes me go, okay, there's something more out there. Yeah, I've seen the ISS many, many times.
And when the ISS goes across the sky, it is doing just what you said about the witness in China. It's in orbit, so you get to see the curve of the Earth as the ISS goes overhead. And you have to stop and think about the speed that it's traveling, because it's only going to be up there for a few minutes, horizon to horizon, and how ripping fast it's going. My point being, if he was saying that it was a streak of light with the curve of the Earth, think about the speed that it is traveling, because what is ISS doing? 17,000 miles an hour?
Very good point. Very good point. And it's still from ground level appears not to really be moving really fast.
Back to exactly my point. Exactly. It's a bone-chilling. Yeah, it's a bone-chilling description coming from that guy from China. What is it that we're seeing? 100,000 miles an hour?
I'll tell you, Jimmy, I don't know.
Micah
That's
Hanks,
where I remain.
everybody. Micah of the Gralien Report, you are one of the best, my friend. Thank you so much.
My brother, always my pleasure. You have a great night. Say hi to Peter for me. You have a wonderful evening, man.
You have it. You have it all. Micah Hanks, everybody. Thank you, Micah.
Good night, Jimmy. Good night, all you Fadernauts out there.
That's what I'm talking about. Micah Hanks, everybody. Thank you so much. When I come back after the break, we will be joined with the one and only Peter Levenda right here on Fade to Black. It's the Monday edition, everybody. Peter Levenda here. Oh, man, I can't wait to hear his story. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. We'll be right back.
KGRA Radio. Intelligent talk.
Are you a paranormal investigator, ghost hunter, or UFO skywatcher? If so, FNGinnovations.com has the product you definitely need in your investigations kit or go bag. Introducing the Morpholite Wide Beam Tactical Flashlights that put the light where you need it most. Traditional flashlights shine a focused round beam with limited line of sight in the dark. Morpholite Tactical Flashlights change all that, utilizing a revolutionary wide beam design to enable you to see safety hazards such as hanging wires and steel, pipes, and holes in the floor you just can't see with a focused round beam. In the field, where safety is paramount, a 180-degree beam increases orientation and peripheral vision in the dark. Morpholite flashlights are ideal for investigations in abandoned facilities such as houses and hospitals, factories, caves, and tunnels. Avoid those low-hanging tree branches that poke your eyes in the woods. Visit FNGinnovations.com to see a full line of tactical lights and accessories. That's FNGinnovations.com.
Now you can find all your favorite talk radio shows live, all in one place at TalkStreamLive.com. Listen from anywhere, office, home, or in your car. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com and click on one of the many live talk show hosts you want to listen to. It's free and easy. No computer? Download the smartphone apps. Never miss your favorite talk show. Find them all at TalkStreamLive.com.
Hey, everybody, what's up? Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and check this out. The 2015 MUFON Symposium will be held this September 24th through the 27th in beautiful downtown Irvine, California. Expanding ufology, opening new doors in academia, industry, and media. Former Defense Minister of Canada Paul Hellyer will be there in person. Former CNN news anchor Cheryl Jones, TV news journalist Jaime Maussan, and MUFON's chief photo analyst Mark D'Antonio. They're just a few of the growing list of names for the 2015 event. It's September 24th through the 27th at the beautiful Hotel Irvine. Get your tickets today at MUFONSymposium.com. That's MUFONSymposium.com. Go Beckley Teppy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn
it. This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
All right, welcome back. This is Fade to Black. Tonight, Peter Levenda is with us. Tomorrow night, Jim Mars with a little Graham Bonnet thrown in, and maybe even a little more Peter Levenda. Wednesday, Clifford Stone. I want to thank Race Hobbs for coming in earlier, and also Micah Hanks. And Peter Levenda is the author of Unholy Alliance and Sinister Forces. He has appeared in the TNT documentary Faces of Evil. He is in his role as an expert on Nazi history with a special regard to the occult and esoteric practices. He will also appear in the upcoming History Channel special Nazi Prophecies. Peter has interviewed Nazis, neo-Nazis, Klansmen, Satanists, self-proclaimed witches, occultists, intelligence agents, clergymen, bogus clergymen, businessmen, military officials, and many, many more during the course of his research for both Unholy Alliance and Sinister Forces. His latest book is The Hitler Legacy, the Nazi Cult in Nazi Diaspora. And he's got an upcoming book that, you know what, I was going to announce tonight, Peter. I'm going to ask your permission really quick. Shall I announce your upcoming title?
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
The new book is it's coming out later on this year, The Tantric Alchemist. I'd like to welcome back to the program our good friend Peter Levenda. Peter, where are you tonight?
I am at the moment in Washington, D.C.
Are you still in the airport? It's okay.
I'm still in the airport. Yes, I am.
Peter, I announced to everybody tonight, at 6 o'clock tonight, you called me. You said, man, I'm stuck at the airport and I'm trying to make my way. And I said, well, Peter, we can put off the show to tomorrow night. And you said, Jimmy, I'm doing the show tonight. I don't care where I do it from, but I'm not going to let down the Fader knots. So thank you for that, Peter.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Well, I mean, it's the least I could do for somebody who raised me from the dead,
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Well, one of the things, and I know that we will do a part deux tomorrow night. We'll bring you back on and we'll finish things up tomorrow night. But one of the things that has fascinated me with you, Peter, is your research and disclosure of a network of things that are going on right now on planet Earth, and diaspora is the right word for it because it's not. It is something that has been ongoing for years, and you have been able to connect these dots. Now, I've had you on this show a couple of times. We just did Contact in the Desert together. I've had you on Coast to Coast talking about this, but and for the listeners that haven't quite grasp what you are referring to in your research, but there is a spider web of influence around the Earth. Is it philosophical or is it tangible?
Oh, it's quite tangible. In fact, you used really the right word. When you say spider web, that's actually one of the names it's known by. In German, it's called Die Spinne, and in Spanish, La Araña. What it is a spider web. It's a network of nodes in various countries, people who know each other, people who've worked together in the past. We're talking about survivors of the Third Reich and also their offspring, you might say, their spiritual children all over the world, people who've taken up the cause, people who've been indoctrinated into it. We've seen a resurgence of it in the United States, of course, philosophically, as you might say, but tangibly, absolutely. I mean, I faced it head on tangibly in Latin America back in the 80s. It was still operating, still there. It's actually the estate that I visited in the 80s still exists. They've lost their guns. And they lost their poison gas and the sarin gas that they were developing at the estate in South America. But for the most part, the estate is still there, and the money has disappeared and wound up in other countries financing similar types of operations. So we're talking about a network that's extremely tangible as well as philosophical. It has both. It has a philosophy, an ideology. It's an ideology of racial superiority, of course, but it goes much deeper than that. It's a very conservative, politically, very extreme right-wing type of philosophy that they espouse, which is a nationalism. It's basically one one group should run everybody else. I mean, to put it in crude terms, that's what it comes down to. But there's an occult aspect to it as well. There's a mystical aspect. They believe they have mystical authority to do this through contact with spiritual forces, racially, through their blood, through genetics, but also through practices that they may be involved with. We're learning more and more about this as the weeks and the months and the years go by, as more rituals become exposed, as more weird groups become exposed that are part of this network.
When somebody says, okay, that sounds great, Peter, you're just trying to scare the crap out of everybody. What's the proof? What's the proof of this?
Well, I can talk, it depends where you want to start. I mean, my books have detailed a lot of this. I've shown the origins of this movement in documents that are here in Washington, D.C., where I am now, in the National Archives and the Library of Congress. In Unholy Alliance, I actually give you the microfilm roll numbers and frame numbers so you can look it up yourselves. This was an actual program of the Third Reich. Many scholars in recent years, thank goodness, have suddenly started to write books about this and to explore this. The late Dr. Nicholas Goodrick Clark, a man I respected very much, had written a great deal about this, exposing the occult aspects of the Third Reich. Michael Cater did the same thing in exposing the Ahnenerbe, the German Ancestral Research Division. But more than that, I've also been involved with studying the survival, the post-war Nazi survival, and all of its many different versions. And some of this goes back to the work that I have in the Hitler Legacy, for instance, and in Ratline, where I show how the networks survived. I give you names. I give you dates, I give you places. I show you how they interacted with each other. In the Hitler Legacy, I give an actual diary. I translated Hans Ulrich Rudel's entire diary, his address book, his telephone book, to show you all the names of people that he contacted throughout the years after the war. People who were fellow travelers in South America, in South Africa, all through Europe, and even in North America, in the United States, Canada, everywhere. These were people who believed, as Hans Ulrich Rudel did, he was Hitler's favorite pilot. He was an ace pilot with more than 80 confirmed kills during World War II. And he worked with people in the United States as well as throughout South America. He had an extensive file of people in Paraguay, for instance, as well as in Argentina, Chile, and all the rest. Walter Rauff, the man who invented the mobile gas chambers, the gas vans that were used in the initial aspect of the Holocaust. He retired peacefully into Chile and died back in the 80s very nicely, and they gave him a Nazi funeral. It was photographed. It's on YouTube. You can watch it. I mean, the proof is there. It doesn't take really too much effort to find it. It's just that no one believes it exists, so they don't look. But I can tell you for sure it exists.
Just recently, within the last couple of days, and I was going to report on this today, a 94-year-old former Nazi SS sergeant, you probably heard this story, who served at Auschwitz, had been convicted on 300,000 counts of accessory to murder. And the state court in northern Germany of Lüneburg, his name was Oscar Groening, gave him a 4-year sentence. And in their verdict, judges went beyond the 3.5-year recommended sentence for 300,000 deaths. They went above and beyond that. I think because of his age, he's 94 years old. And Groening's defense team had called for him to be acquitted altogether, arguing that as far as the law was concerned, that he didn't facilitate mass murder. Well, of course, 300,000 deaths. He was the accountant, and everybody that showed up at Auschwitz, he was the guy looking at their belongings and so forth. Accounting for everything. And then, of course, participated in the deaths there. But one would say that he's one of the last 2 or 3 surviving confirmed SS officers on Earth. Everybody's died off now, and this guy's going to prison. There's nothing left. What do we have to fear here? Well, it's not the living SS officers, is it? The legacy has been handed down and indoctrinated.
Well, it obviously has. I mean, it has all over the world. There are people still who idolize the Third Reich, who are looking at Hitler as a misunderstood genius. And I come across this all the time in my travels. It's throughout Latin America, for instance. They will say, yes, well, Hitler did some bad things, but really he was a genius. And we're hearing this now in parts of Asia and parts of the Middle East, certainly. They look at Hitler as some kind of a mystical genius. And in India, there are certain factions of the Indian political parties who look upon Hitler as what they call an avatar, as the incarnation of a kind of Hindu god that was going to wipe the earth clean of all wickedness, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a mystique, this is a mythology that still exists. It's definitely influencing very heavily a lot of the terrorist groups that we know so much about today. They believe everything that Hitler wrote in Mein Kampf, in his autobiography. They take for granted the protocols of the Elders of Zion, which was a hoax document created by the Russian secret police to discredit Jews, and yet they took this document to heart. It's in translation all over the world. People don't realize this in North America, but it's all over the place in South America, Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. You're going to come across translations in many different languages, Arabic, Urdu, Pashto, of these documents, accepted as if they're genuine, accepted as if they're real. One of the Saudi Arabian ministers once made a statement to the effect that he felt that the Protocols of the Elders of Zion was a genuine document mapping out this idea of a Jewish global conspiracy, to control the world. All of this is still with us today, and it's informing political action among the very types of people we would expect this to happen, people who are not well educated in world politics, in world history, people who have a smattering of exposure to this stuff, look at these documents and figure, well, this has got to be true. These things have to be real, because look at what's happening to the world. It's, to their way of thinking, is obviously a result of this worldwide conspiracy.
Do you have a hard time convincing people of your evidence? Well, before you answer, when I introduced you at Contact in the Desert, and it was a privilege, actually I got to do it a couple of times, but specifically, I'm looking out as I introduce you, and there was probably 500-600 people in the audience. It was like a rock performance, and so when I look out at the audience as I'm introducing you, I'm thinking to myself, I hope they're prepared for what they're about to hear, the evidence, because of the way that you presented. After you spoke there, did you have people coming up to you saying, hey, yes, and I know this guy, or I know this? Were you able to collect information from people because you're speaking to such a large crowd?
Well, actually, the response was very positive, was very good. I was not really prepared for it. I haven't spoken in a public venue since Amsterdam, which was some years ago. So it was, and this was an American audience, so this was very gratifying to see the response. And to answer your question, yes, people have come up. In fact, they still come up. I get emails now. In fact, I've gotten emails because of this show. I've gotten emails because of Coast to Coast, the Coast to Coast appearance a couple of weeks or months ago.
Right.
People are writing to me now, and they're saying, look, I have more information to give you. I got a phone call. I had a phone call from a lady someplace in the United States. I won't say where. I won't expose where she is, but she called me. And how she got my phone number, I don't know, and she wouldn't tell me. And her number was blocked and restricted, and I usually never answer those calls. But something made me answer this one, and she calls me up. And who is she? She's a relative of Georg Anton Koch, who died in Indonesia, the one I wrote the book Ratline about.
Right.
She's like a relative. This woman has to be in her 80s. She remembers him as Uncle George, and she's telling me information. I mean, this has been happening a lot with the publications of the books, and of course the appearances on these stations. People are coming up with corroborative evidence. They're clarifying things that I didn't understand or I didn't know. They're making the picture a bit clearer, but it doesn't contradict what I've been saying. It reinforces it.
Is there a country or a continent that the spider web doesn't reach into, or is it truly a global problem?
Well, I haven't found that if there is. I mean, every continent, for sure, with the possible exception of Antarctica, but even then I can't be sure because of Operation High Jump and all that stuff that went on down there.
Right.
But for the most part, I would say virtually every continent, because definitely throughout North Africa in particular, this is a major problem. It is, of course, in the Middle East, throughout Europe, Australia has a large neo-Nazi movement down there, allied with Satanism in some cases. Asia, of course, in North South America. So every continent really has tentacles of the spider web.
I wanted to ask you, there's two things I want to try to get in a little deep tonight, and then, of course, we'll pick things up tomorrow night. We'll do part two. One of the things that I try to gather information on is Operation High Jump. And one of the most requested subjects, Peter, I'm not kidding, if I just say high jump like right now, right, in real time, Twitter's going to blow up. Yeah. All right, high jump. You know, it's one of those things out there. It's like hidden history. You can find the superficial reports about it, the stuff that have been replicated and duplicated all over the web. You can find the secondhand stories about it, but nothing really concrete to blow this thing out of the water. First question is, why is that? And second, I have to ask you the obvious. What can you give us?
Well, why is it so superficial? First off, why? Well, look at the timeline. This is the thing that bothers anybody who looks at this. Anybody who has, two brain cells rubbed together looks at high jump and says, what the hell was going on that we had to send a convoy to Antarctica in the months just after the end of World War II? What was that all about? There's no earthly reason for this to have occurred unless there was something very mysterious taking place there, something they have not told us to this day. People who've been on Operation High Jump have not talked about it, and that includes the guy who became Marguerite Oswald's literary agent, Keith Thompson. Here's a guy who he was an avowed member of the German secret police of the Sicherheitsdienst, the SD, just before the war started. He was an American citizen who so loved Hitler, he took an oath to Hitler, and then World War II started. He winds up in our armed services in the U.S. Navy. How the hell that happened, I don't know, because he was a card-carrying member of the party and of the German Secret Service. And then he winds up as part of Operation High Jump. He goes down there with the operation, comes back, and says nothing. I mean, here's a guy who he was independently wealthy. Here was a person who had connections to every kind of bizarre right-wing extremist group in the United States. He was part of the spider web that we're talking about. He was on very good terms with Hans-Ulrich Rudel, with Otto Skorzeny, Hitler's commando, with a guy who was really running Odessa for a long time. He's on good terms with all these guys. And yet he goes to Antarctica as part of this mission and comes back and says nothing. No one has said anything. How does that make any sense?
It doesn't. And the official doctrine, or the official statements about it, we're testing equipment for the cold.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah, right.
We're and then you read between the lines where they say, we're consolidating and extending the United States sovereignty, over the Antarctic continent. Well, excuse me, and why would you have somebody like him involved with a project like that? And then you tie in the other statements from Byrd. But again, so that's part of why the cover-up is there. And then let's take it the step further, the Levenda side of things.
Okay, well, I've been looking at this for a long time. High jump has been on the radar for a lot of us for a very long time. What we've looked at since high jump are the succeeding expeditions that America sent down there. Now, if you follow Linda Moulton Howe's website, if you read her articles, she has started to publish a number of articles about a man, one of our people, one of our military, who was down there in Antarctica, not during high jump, but maybe 30 years later. And he's down there and gave a very credible report of what he experienced and what he saw down there. And it has to do with all the things that everybody else is freaking out about. Were there spacecraft down there of some bizarre kind? We sent engineers to take a look at something. They came back and they were shattered emotionally. They got sent off to New Zealand somewhere. All of this is in Linda Moulton Howe's website. She goes into it to some extent. Something very fishy has been taking place in Antarctica. It's been taking place there for decades. The Nazis actually sent an expedition before high jump, back in the 30s, as part of the geophysical year, as they called it. They sent down an expedition. Very little was reported from that expedition. Then we send down high jump. High jump is supposed to undergo all sorts of medical testing and equipment testing and all kinds of stuff. They didn't bring any freaking equipment. Okay, they brought down soldiers. They brought down troops.
Right.
You know? They didn't bring the equipment they said they were going to use for testing. They had inadequate test equipment when they showed up there. How does that happen when you send a convoy? When you send a convoy there, how do they show up and say, oops, we forgot our equipment?
Everything is checked, double-checked, inventory, please, it's the military. That's what they do.
It's the military, and it was just after the end of the war. We dropped 2 atomic bombs. We're not that sloppy. So what's up, guys? What's happening? Something was happening. Something was going on, and it may have something to do, I hate to say it, with the UFO phenomenon. I mean, there seems to be a connection there. There seems to be a connection with that, and then there's the Nazi connection. My goodness, there's an embarrassment of riches there. But the problem is we don't have enough to work with because nobody is talking.
With what do you make of Byrd's statements about the pole to pole aircraft? Can you read into that a UFO connection, or is it Nazi high technology? What is it that he was referring to, and do you have any information that he may have meant something else?
Actually, part of what I was down in Chile doing was I visited the offices of El Mercurio, which is the Chilean newspaper, which actually reported this conversation with Byrd. It appears nowhere else, oddly enough. But Chile, remember, the very southern part of Chile is not that far from Antarctica. They have kind of a claim on part of that continent. So it was kind of logical for Byrd to talk to them. So I went to the offices of Mercurio in Valparaiso in Chile. This was before I wound up in Parral with all that stuff that happened. And I talked to them and I said, what can you tell me about this? And they just sort of looked at each other and looked at me and said, well, we can't tell you anything. And I said, well, what do you mean? And they said, well, the whole thing with Byrd is very mysterious. The article was written by an American, actually. The interview was done by an American, but published in their newspaper. The whole thing is like, it looked like kind of some strange, either it was a strange disinformation thing that they were playing, having an American interview an American, but only publish it in Spanish, or it was a mistake. Byrd just started talking like he wasn't supposed to and said things he wasn't supposed to say. So they kept it in that newspaper and it didn't appear anywhere else until people started digging and they found it.
And we're talking about 1947.
Yeah.
To the best of my knowledge, the thought of pole-to-pole warfare with aircraft was something that wasn't even part of fantasy science fiction writing at the time. What do you think was?
It wasn't. It was 1947. What does that tell you?
That's what I'm trying to say. Was it a precursor to some knowledge about the events of 1947, or was it a slip of the tongue?
Yeah, I know what you mean. You could say it might have been a slip of the tongue. Obviously, that mission was very important. The timing is extremely suggestive. I mean, 1947 was the year. It was the year for everything. It was the year we created the National Security Act. It was the year we created the CIA and the Department of Defense. And, we had Forrestal going nuts. We had all this stuff going on in 47. This was all, Kenneth Arnold and then Roswell, as we all know. So all of this is taking place in that year. It's extremely suggestive that somebody knew something was going on. And somehow they connected the dots to Antarctica. I mean, it's a pretty safe place because nobody hangs out there. You know what I mean? So if you're going to conduct experiments, it's the best place,
right,
in the world to conduct experiments because there's not even very much satellite coverage there. Try doing a Google Maps of Antarctica, right?
Yeah,
you're not going to see roads and villages. You got nothing but snow.
I've actually done that. I have used Google Earth satellite and looked all over. And this is what I find interesting here is that here is Byrd making one of the most dramatic statements that you possibly could, period, on any level. Why wasn't there a journalist in the United States to see that and blow that out of the water? And why wasn't that on the cover of, the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times? It's an explosive statement to make, and it was completely squashed.
Yeah. And then we have, our favorite general out there telling us that the next war is going to be fought between, this world and some, denizens of some other galaxy. You've got MacArthur making wild statements. You've got all this other stuff happening in that same kind of hothouse atmosphere at that time. And then everything goes deadly quiet.
Yeah, totally.
Nothing to see here. Move right along.
When we come, I know. What do you think? It's just like crazy.
Obviously,
right.
I mean,
hey, Peter.
History is important. History is important to all of us. Knowing the true history, knowing what really happened, is important to knowing who we are, especially who we are in the scheme of things in this world. And we are being robbed of part of our history. We are not allowed to know, and this is very frustrating. It's like when they held up publication of the Dead Sea Scrolls for like 30 years, or longer. They wouldn't publish the translations of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I'm thinking to myself, well, why? Don't we deserve to know this? Don't we deserve to know what's in there? It could change everything, sure, but we can handle it, okay? Just let us know. Tell us what's going on.
Don't make up our minds for us. We're adults here. We can't do it. Let's take a quick break. Peter, stay right there. And when we come back, I'm going to ask Peter the one question that I might have done this in private once, but I'm going to do it live on the air. I'm going to ask Peter about the Vril. I'm going right there, Peter. Stay right there. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Tonight, Peter Levenda. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
Attention, all Fadernauts. Studio Dome has a special deal on their SD1 Bluetooth speaker. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on their banner, enter the promo code Jimmy, and you get $40 off and free shipping on the SD1. It's voice activated, comes with a USB antenna, cables, and a carry bag. Never listen to your phone, tablet, or laptop speakers ever again. It's the only way to listen to Fade to Black. That's jimmychurchradio.com, Studio Dome banner, promo code Jimmy. Go Beckley Teppy.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
Hey, everybody, what's up? Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and check this out. The 2015 MUFON Symposium will be held this September 24th through the 27th in beautiful downtown Irvine, California. Expanding ufology, opening new doors in academia, industry, and media. Former Defense Minister of Canada Paul Hellyer will be there in person. Former CNN news anchor Cheryl Jones, TV news journalist Jaime Maussan, and MUFON's chief photo analyst Mark D'Antonio. They're just a few of the growing list of names for the 2015 event. It's September 24th through the 27th at the beautiful Hotel Irvine. Get your tickets today at MUFONSymposium.com. That's MUFONSymposium.com. Go Beckley Teppy.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. It is Monday, July 20th, the Monday edition of Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Tonight, Peter Levenda is with us. I do want to say thank you to Race Hobbs for coming in earlier, Micah Hanks as well. And right now we have Peter Levenda with us. Tomorrow night, Jim Mars is here, and Graham Bonnet's going to stop by too as well. And then we're going to do a little more Peter Levenda tomorrow night for a follow-up on tonight's show. And then Wednesday, Clifford Stone is with us. So just a great week lined up here at Fade to Black. Now, Peter, one of the things, I mean, out of all of World War II and Nazi high technology and everything else, the one thing that comes up time and time and time again, and it's fascinating, is the Vril. And part of it is because of the paranormal, occult, off-world aspect to it. But the second thing is the lack of real hard evidence of it. In that, that's not like there's volumes of real information out there that are documented, Nazi document. There's a lack of that. So for you, where do you stand on the Vril and what was the Vril Society?
Well, it goes back to that novel by Bulwer Lytton, of course, which was called Vril, The Power of the Coming Race, which has all of those, sort of Aryan overtones there, just in the title alone. Vril, the word, derives from the Sanskrit vir, which means man. We get the word virility from that. So it indicates power. It indicates power on a sort of a supernatural level or a paranormal level. Bulwer Lytton took this concept and created this race of beings and this power called Vril. And it was picked up by German occultists around the turn of the century and was discussed, quite openly, the way they would discuss the ether, let's say, or the Akasha, or the Akashic records, or anything like that. So it was part of the general parlance, part of the general discussion. And then there were rumors that there was something created called the Vril Gesellschaft, the Vril Society, which was supposedly a secret society of black magicians, using the term very loosely, that were involved in summoning this power, using it, guiding it, controlling it, and directing it towards their own ends, which might have been political, which might have been simply to blast other magicians out of the ether or whatever. But this was the idea. It gained more currency among people like Powell and Bergier, who wrote Morning of the Magicians, and then later Trevor Ravenscroft wrote about it in The Spear of Destiny. So there was not a lot of documentation on it. However, in the last, I would say, 10 years, probably not much more than that, there have been indications that there was something called the Vril Gesellschaft in Germany in the 1920s. We're not exactly sure of whom it was composed. There's still some controversy about it, but it looks as though it did exist. There was something at least that called itself by that name. And so that's something that we're still looking at. A lot of documents from that period, of course, were destroyed during the war, both government and personal records, so it's kind of hard to put it all together. But there does seem to have been some truth to the idea that such an organization existed. I think that it's very likely that it would have, because why not, basically? The Tula Gesellschaft existed, which was virtually the Vril Society itself, because they were concerned with some of the same ideas and the same concepts, using occultism mixed with fascism, mixed with ideas about race and nationhood. And the Vril Society could very easily have been part of that, could have been a splinter group of the Tula Society, because occult societies, as we all know, break apart into warring factions all the time. So to me, I think that there is gradually going to become more information available about the Vril Society. We have academics in Europe mostly working in this area, and I think they will uncover more about it. We know now more about the German occult scene in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. We know more of it now than we've ever known before. I mean, more of it's come out recently in the last 10, 15 years or so. So a lot of it is, some of it's contradicting, of course, what Trevor Ravenscroft would say, or Powell and Bergier, but some of the other stuff is a lot stranger than fiction, especially some of the sexually oriented rituals that were part of some of the German secret societies at the time, and the idea that the the sexual energy, let's say, is really what Vril was all about. And this was, preserved in groups like the Saturnine group in Germany, the OTO, of course, in Germany, the pre-Crowley version of the OTO, which claimed that they had sexual secrets from the East and all of this. This was all part of the same milieu, this idea that there was some mystery about sexual power, which was really at heart magical or occult power that could be wielded. And we've seen this in Nazi Germany. We saw how sexuality was essentially the powering force behind a lot of what went on in Nazi Germany. A lot of the mythology, a lot of the film footage, a lot of the artwork and everything else was sort of based around this ideal of man and woman, how they should look, how they should behave, around procreation, the Lebensborn society, the sort of the stud farm for the SS and all of that.
Right.
So there was a lot of that.
What about Maria Orsic? And is there evidence that out there that she was actually a real person? In that, after the war, she disappeared. Could have jumped on one of her flying saucers and took off. That was, there's all kinds of conjecture about that and stories. Fascinating as they are, there's no evidence that she was real. Or was she a real person? And backing up to her is the Thule Society. And is there an actual direct connection to Hitler through them or through Vril and Maria Orsic?
Okay, well, that's a very complicated question there, Jimmy.
Yes, it is. But you're Peter Levenda.
Think about it. Okay, let me take the second part of your question first, the third part last.
Right.
Okay, the Thule Gesellschaft and Hitler is no question. Okay, there is no question there is a link. Absolutely not. The man who founded the organization was a guy called Baron Sabattendorf, and he wrote his autobiography, and it was called Before Hitler Came. And it was about how he started the Thule Gesellschaft and created this organization, which was both, political and spiritual all mixed together. And then Hitler basically joined it, became involved with it because it was the same people who were involved with that organization were involved with the very founding of the Nazi Party. So he was involved in both groups. They both met at the same place at the Four Seasons Hotel in Munich. They were all part of the same group. They exchanged the same members. Dietrich Eckart, for instance, was in both groups. So there's no doubt about that. There absolutely is not. To try to say there's no connection would be kind of pointless because we all know by this time that there definitely was. As far as Orsic is concerned, we have a different situation. I believe that it's patterned on a real person. I think Orsic really existed. I'm not sure of all the details if she, was patterned after maybe one of the other female occultists who were around Germany at that time, who were better known. It might have been a pseudonym she might have been operating under. There's a Maria Naglowska, of course, who was very prominent in some of the same occult circles we've been talking about, especially the ones that had sexual orientation, that sort of glorified or mystified the sexual impulse. So we have a lot of possibilities for Orsic in these groups. And Naglowska, we connect her with the OTO in some ways. We connect her in some ways with Aleister Crowley and all of that. So remember, these people all knew each other. They all hung out. They sometimes formed alliances and they fell into fighting with each other and all the rest of it. And that clutters up the documentary evidence a great deal, especially when they start using occult names and pseudonyms. And then you really, you scratch your head. You don't know what you're talking about until somebody gives you the scorecard.
And then we have our own domestic version of those two groups, which is the Nine. But the Nine, the Nine was real. The Nine really did do the things that they said that they did. And there's plenty of evidence for that. Who was the Nine?
Actually, more evidence has come to light, as a matter of fact. I've been working on that. I've never really given up on researching the Nine because I find them fascinating. I've gotten a lot of very angry letters from existing members of the Nine, by the way. They have taken great exception to what I wrote about them in Sinister Forces. The funny thing is they also admitted they hadn't read Sinister Forces, so there you go. But the Nine was a group of people that were brought together sort of ad hoc. by a man called Andrea Puharich. Andrea, or Henry Puharich, was an American citizen, but he had been born in the United States, but he was of Yugoslavian background, and he was very fascinated with the paranormal. He was a medical doctor. He served with the U.S. Army during the Korean War as well. He was stationed at Edgewood Arsenal, where they did the chemical biological weapons research. This is a real person. He's the man who discovered Uri Geller, for instance, and the psychic Peter Herkos, who brought them both to the United States to be tested by various front organizations for the CIA, for instance, the SRI out in California. So he's a real person. And back in the 1950s, around the time of the major saucer scare, the flap over Washington, D.C.,
1952. Let's be specific. Yeah.
52, yeah. He's having seances, at least one very important seance that consists of 9 people. And the medium is a Dr. Vinod, a man from India, from Pune in India, and he's a channel for 9 extraterrestrial beings who are talking through him to these 9 people in a farmhouse in Maine. And the 9 people are a DuPont, a Forbes, an Astor. I mean, we're talking about blue blood American wealth, including Arthur Young, the inventor of the Bell helicopter, and his wife, Ruth Forbes Payne Young, distant relative of John Kerry, for instance, and of the Forbes financial empire, all the same family. They're all meeting at this farmhouse, and they're all being given their marching orders. They're being told by these extraterrestrials, we are 9, and you are 9. Go out there and help us change the world. Create world peace, et cetera, all kinds of things. So they're given these marching orders, you might say. Later, Uri Geller is sucked into it as well. And he's contacted by the 9, according to the story. And the spaceship on which the 9 are communicating to the human 9 is called Hoover, which is very funny. It sounds like Hoover to me, and I'm thinking the FBI is running the spaceship, controlling Uri Geller. God knows, it's possible.
It is.
And then, of course, we have Spectra, we have all this other stuff that's taking place. All kinds of wild stuff is going around Puharich. But one of the major connections for me, the thing that really made me stop and look at this very carefully, was the fact that Arthur Young and his wife, Ruth Forbes Payne Young, were the in-laws of Ruth Payne, who lived in Texas in 1963. And it was she, of course, who opened her home to Lee Harvey Oswald and Marina Oswald. She had gone up to see Arthur Young, visited her in-laws, basically. She was married to Michael Payne, the son of Ruth Payne Young. She went up to visit them. I think it was in September of 1963. And in November of 63, of course, Oswald is alleged to have shot the president. So what is that? How do we get just 9 people in a room in Maine in 1952, and 11 years later, one of their number essentially is involved in the assassination of the president of the United States?
Indirectly,
a president, by the way, who wanted to go to the moon.
Right. And indirectly, in a weird sort of way, and we'll pick this up tomorrow night. That spider web that we're talking about earlier, of course, was in direct reference to the Third and Fourth Reich, and the Hitler legacy. But also this strange spider web that we're talking about, with that, we have our own versions of that too as well. And it's right there in front of us. And when you look at, and this is the question, when you look at the Thule Society and you look at Vril and influencing Hitler, or Hitler actually asking for the influence, right? Okay, requesting this information. Here we have, DuPont, Forbes, Astor's, Arthur Young, all in one spot, who are also communicating off-world, and then that influence going back directly onto the United States. And this is a documented instance of this actually happening. Similar to what was going on in Nazi Germany? Absolutely. And we had our own version of that, one that was very documented, but also spoken about and influences. How could it not right? With the DuPont and Astors influencing not only government, but the industrial side of things, too, as well.
Well, just one more point before we leave, just to get everybody all hot and bothered. My most recent research has revealed that the woman, the DuPont lady who was this was one of the 9, was at that seance, Marcella DuPont, was the translator into French from English of the Urantia book.
Oh, shut up. No. Really?
100%. Yep. Just found that out just a couple of weeks ago.
I did. Well, I never heard that. Over the last year, I've been reading that, and both the audio version, because it's gnarly, and reading the text. Incredible book. You know what? We're going to save that for tomorrow night. You've done blown my mind once again, Peter.
That's my job.
Yeah, let's stay on. Thank you so much. Let's stay on the 9 for a second. What was some of the channeled information directly?
This is the problem, you see, because Puharich doesn't really go into all of it. He does reproduce a transcript of that first seance. It's in the back of his book, Uri, about Uri Geller. And it's reproduced there, I guess, in toto. I don't know, but there it is. But since then, there's been a lot of other channel communications. And, of course, people have picked up when other members of the 9 died off, then people replaced them. So you have an ongoing 9, which is still in existence today. And as I say, they have contacted me a couple of years ago when Sinister Forces had come out the first time. And there was a lot of correspondence with them. But I was trying to, tell them, listen, this is not a hatchet job. I'm trying to tell you, these are based on facts. In fact, it's based on the Warren Commission. Ruth Bain was being interrogated by the Warren Commission, of course, about her role with Lee Harvey Oswald and Marina. And every time, Arthur Young gets mentioned, she starts talking about where she went. Alan Dulles cuts her off and doesn't let her talk about it. And that alone, that got me really interested, which is why I started digging, very seriously into the story. So the 9, it's a typical kind of channeling thing that you get under these circumstances. It's kind of authoritarian. It's kind of autocratic. It's conservative, you might say, politically, in the sense that they want world peace and all of that, but they're talking about a one-world government. They're talking about, the kind of bugaboo, the New World Order kind of stuff that they're talking about, which has become the bugaboo of the Illuminati conspirologists and that sort of thing. So there's this idea of, eradicating borders, creating a single world, enforcing their rule upon the rest of us. We get that sometimes in UFO channel stuff.
Sure.
Where there's a kind of, quasi-fascist, underlying, message there. So that's part of what was going on, and that's part of what Uri Geller was getting through Dr. Vinod and those first channeling sessions.
What about, have you been able to find out who the current members of the 9 are? Are they still descendants of, the DuPonts and the Forbes and the Astors? Is that, or
no? They're not biologically. They're not genetically descended. They're just people who picked up the lance when it got dropped.
Have you been able to identify?
One of them was a very famous race car driver, a guy called John Whitmore.
Oh no! Really? Wow.
You know the name?
Yeah, of course. And
okay, well,
have you been able to
very
identify?
Prominent member.
And what about the other 8?
In fact, he's the guy who complained to me.
Really?
Whitmore actually sent me an email. I still have it. I've kept it all this time because it's priceless. I mean, he's like ripping me a new one because of what I said about the 9, although he hadn't actually read the book. So I very graciously, I thought, send him a copy of the book. He could see for himself what I said, and I never heard anything back from him.
Of course you wouldn't have. Have you been able to, because, once you find out that it's the truth, then you can't argue. You can't fight no longer. It ain't going to go to court, that's for sure. Have you been able to tie, and I know this may seem like a stretch, but I think there is an obvious connection there, or there should be, or a want to be, and that is tying the 9 to other groups like the Bilderbergs, for example.
Well, yeah, I mean, as far as the old money connections are concerned, that's definitely there. If you look at Marcella DuPont herself, you'll find intimations of it here and there, but you won't find the hard connections that you will with the rest of her family, the DuPonts, you know. So the DuPonts, of course, the connections to groups like the Bilderbergers, and it's very real, very tangible. The Astors, the Forbes. I mean, there's the Forbes connection to Skull and Bones, for instance. I mean,
that's where I was going. That's exactly where I was going. I said Bilderberg's another group. That's, you know, there must be, because the names are there.
Sure.
Yeah.
The names are there.
Yeah.
So it's old money, right? It's not the nouveau riche. It's not the new money. It's not drug money. It's not, you know, any of that stuff. This is the old money. These are the old moneyed families.
Yeah,
and they were very prominent, very active politically. The DuPonts were extremely active politically. They were very much against FDR, against Franklin Delano Roosevelt. They despised the New Deal. So they were really trying to support the opposition where that was concerned. Marcella DuPont was in the audience when they were having speeches denouncing FDR, for instance. So there was this idea that the New Deal was, you know, communist or socialist or something, and that was all bad, and FDR was a dictator, and all these things that sound very familiar today. We heard a lot in the 1930s and 1940s from people like the DuPonts.
Well, one of the things I want to talk about tomorrow night, and we'll leave it on this note, it'll be a lead-in to tomorrow night. You have never been known as a UFO guy. You know, it's one of the subjects that you move around, or you used to. What's your position today?
Well, let me put it this way. Of course, I wrote about it a bit in Sinister Forces. I have a whole chapter on it called Communion in the 3rd volume. So I'm not unfamiliar with it. And I wrote about it on and off throughout the 3 volumes, especially Kenneth Arnold and the Fred Prisman, because of Fred Prisman's connection to the Kennedy assassination and all that stuff. So I've been involved in writing about it. It's always been there out of the corner of my eye. But these days it's becoming more and more central to what I'm looking at, because it seems to me to be a key to all of this. And I don't mean, you know, flying saucers, little green men necessarily, but I do mean that the phenomenon is central to what's going on. There is an off-world connection to all of this. And this is something that everybody falls into. I mean, Jim Mars started, you know, with the Kennedy assassination, then he wrote Alien Agenda. You know?
Right.
A lot of people started, you know, writing about political conspiracies, writing about political realities, and then slowly finding out that there's something else behind all of it. And I've resisted it for a long time, just because, you know, I mean, it's there. The military stuff is there. The intelligence stuff is there. You can't get around it. You know, the connections to assassinations. There's this weird thing. The 9 are involved. What the hell is that all about, you know? And then we had Prisman involved. What is that all about?
Right.
You know, why would Prisman be there with you know, the Maury Island affair and then show up, you know, in New Orleans being grilled by Jim Garrison? What?
Well,
you know?
see, and
so I had to stop and say, look, I got to find out what this is all about. So I've become more and more involved in it in the last year or so.
Yeah, you become a UFO researcher by default. I mean, there's nothing you can do. It's almost by proxy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Peter, my good friend, thank you so much. I know that you had a very trying day, and you promised. In fact, you demanded that I not change things. That you would come on tonight for the Fadernauts. Thank you so much.
There you go.
Go check into your hotel. Have a great evening. Go eat some food. Relax a little bit. And then we'll see you right back here tomorrow night for part 2.
Outstanding. Thanks a lot, Jimmy.
You got it. Peter Levenda, everybody, thank you so much. And I will, I'll say this. I'm going to throw Peter under the bus a little bit. I know I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but after the day that he had today, I said, Peter, man, we can do this another time. No, Jimmy, the Fadernauts, Fade to Black, that's it. Say no more. I'm coming on the show. I will make sure that I do. So, Peter, thank you so much. You didn't have to. You shouldn't have, but he did. Thank you, Peter. Tomorrow night we will do part 2. And if you think about it, what did he just say? My loving audience, what did he just say? Tomorrow night, Jim Mars and Peter Levenda on the same frigging show with the little Graham Bonnet sandwich in the middle. It doesn't get any better than that. What a fabulous show I had tonight with all of you. Thank you so much. Race Hobbs kicking things off. Micah Hanks, Peter Levenda. We have so much news tomorrow night that we are also going to be mixing in, and I've got all of that staged too as well. What a great night tonight. I want to thank all of the Fadernauts for coming in. I have been watching Twitter all night long. What an amazing night. What an amazing show for all of you. Okay, tomorrow night, think about that for a second. Jim Mars, the JFK guy, and Peter Levenda, the other JFK guy on the same show. It's going to be great. And thank you to everybody. What a great Monday night. What a great way to kick off the week. Thank you. I just thanked Race Hobbs, Micah Hanks for coming in. Thank you so much. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Fade to Black. Executive producer is Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm and Mark D. Kovar. And Rita pulled it all off tonight. I'm just going to say, everybody, right now, everybody in Twitter, say thank you to Rita for pulling off tonight's show. The show is also produced by Hilton J. Paul, Mark D. Kovar, LJ3, Renee, Mark Dunbar, and Jonas. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Fady by Dale. Webmaster is Method of Signaling. Music, this guy. Doug Aldridge. Man, I wish I could play like that. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication, KGRA, The Planet. Tomorrow night, Jim Mars, Graham Bonnet, and Peter Levenda. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Email is jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Everybody be safe. Tomorrow night's going to be epic. See ya.